Hello one and all, my name is Ed and welcome to this video. Have you guys noticed I'm terrible with introductions? So I'm finally in the process of chucking out my old video camera, but I don't have the cash to buy a replacement just yet, so a complete voiceover will have to do.
What? Then what was the point of cleaning the room and ordering a green screen?
I don't know, figure something else out for another video. Honestly, at this point, I might as well just embrace my cringy fantasies and go full furf. You know what? The webcam can wait. I'm going full into character. Let's see, blah blah blah, poorly detailed DeviantArt scenario that no one actually cares about, yada yada yada. I'm a furfro full-time from here on out. So that's cool and all, but now I don't have thumbs anymore. I'll have to custom order some new Joy-Cons, but that can also wait. I have a video to narrate.
Hey, that rhymed!
You do realize that the immersion regarding the story of my fur form completely shatters when you continue to utilize that shitty camera, right?
Not really. This was pre-recorded months in advance before you decided to do the whole quote-unquote scenario. All I'm really doing is reading the script.
Months? Wasn't I working on a Great Lakes vessel a few months ago? And how can this be pre-recorded if you're directly answering my question?
That's exactly right, Future Ed. Unlike my last video, where I really held myself back in terms of goofing around, this video will be done in a much more freestyle kind of way, where I'm just gonna let
those of you who watched my Mario Kart 8 re-ranked video before watching this one, yes, this is the usual output level for my videos. Welcome to the channel. Alright, the intros for my most recent videos have been getting longer and longer, so screw it! You saw the title, you know what we're doing here. Sit back, relax, grab a drink, and allow the self-proclaimed ambassador of cringe over here to flex his storytelling muscles and go over the complete story and lore of one of his favorite video games of all time, Hyrule Warriors. The first one, I should clarify. There are two Hyrule Warriors games as of the writing of this script. This video is talking about the one that doesn't lead up to Breath of the Wild. Okay, glad we cleared that up. Okay, so before we get to the actual story of the game, we gotta talk about the events that took place before the start of the game. And in order to make sense of that, we have to talk about The Legend of Zelda's densely packed and rather infamous timeline. I'm not going into everything, just what's important for the sake of understanding Hyrule Warriors 1. Kind of a big problem right from the jump, because the creators of the Zelda series have consistently doubled down that the events of Hyrule Warriors is 100% not canon, and therefore does not belong on the official Zelda timeline. I get that this is their series and that they have the final say, but I vehemently disagree with that stance and think that this game should be canon. Plot holes be damned, but I'm not here to ruffle any feathers, so I'll keep my mouth shut. Having said that, for the sake of comprehending everything that happens in this video, I'm going to go ahead and place this game on the timeline anyways, at the risk of drawing out the ire of both Miyamoto and Aonuma. Sorry, Nintendo. At this point, I'm going to safely assume that if you clicked on this video, then you are absolutely okay with spoilers regarding Hyrule Warriors. The game is more than a decade old at this point, and the story for the game pulls from many games from the Zelda franchise. Here is a list of games that I will bring up during this video, and please understand that if a spoilerish moment from a game is referenced or discussed in Hyrule Warriors, then I will very likely be covering it. At this point, you only have yourself to blame if you wind up being upset over what I talk about. Thank you for understanding. So with that disclaimer behind us, let's briefly discuss this wrecking ball of a timeline. The history of Hyrule starts at Skyward Sword and follows a single through line until the events of Ocarina of Time, of which the Gerudo chieftain Ganondorf manages to steal the Triforce and more or less transforms himself into an immortal and immoral force of absolute evil, with the goal of ruling the entire land of Hyrule until the end of the world. The real story is more complicated than that, but that's the gist of it. Just as it appears that this monstrosity is about to swallow all of Hyrule, the reincarnation of the hero of legend appears just in time, and the resulting battle between good and evil splits the world's fate into three branching paths. What path leads where isn't important right here and now, and there are far better videos that go over it than I possibly could here. But what's important is that Ocarina of Time has created a closely related trio of parallel universes. I say closely related because it's proven in multiple games that these timelines have the potential to cross into each other should the circumstances allow it. Since Hyrule Warriors isn't canon, it hasn't been officially actually placed on the timeline, and so on a technical level, we don't know for sure which of the 3 timelines it would actually fall under. Although, plenty of potential hints have been dropped. It is here that I would like to personally thank the game theorists for making this video where MatPat explains where he thinks the game should be placed on the timeline. And for this video, I'm going to be continuing the story based on his deductions. None of this is canon, and I love Hyrule Warriors, so I don't think I'll get into that much trouble if I get a little creative. Also, keep in mind that where this game falls on the timeline isn't all that necessary in order to understand the story, so long as you can all accept that the timeline itself is what's important. Honestly, the Hyrule we see in this game could very well be its own 4th timeline outside of the 3 that's established, but just to keep things simple, MatPat theorized that the first Hyrule Warriors' placement is at the end of what he called the Triumphant Child timeline. This is the universe where the hero as an adult defeated Ganon and after his victory, returned back through time to 7 years prior to live the life that he would have otherwise missed had he stayed 7 years ahead. If you're not too familiar with this convoluted history, this timeline leads into Majora's Mask, then Twilight Princess, and eventually after that, Four Swords Adventures. Honestly, please go watch that game theory video, it's really good. Well, it wouldn't be an Ed's channel video without me having to edit this stupid script after all was said and done, huh? Well, actually, I haven't started recording the footage yet as of me having to add this, but the script was pretty much done when Game Theory went and added a new Zelda timeline video that could throw all of my hard work into the bin. Good news is I was spared from that fate, thank God. Tom, you saved hundreds of hours of hard work from going under. I love you, but I suppose I should be quick about what I learned from this video because, yeah, Hyrule Warriors was brought up briefly and I am using Game Theory's takes on the timeline as a reference for my own video. Well, like I said, I was spared. I was updated on the fact that this game is still not considered canon. Hooray! And given that the script is done now and I actually have done due diligence with the entire story of Hyrule Warriors 1, I get why this game isn't canon, but I gotta be real. I still want this game to be canon. I don't care if the plot holes make it impossible. The release of Tears of the Kingdom throws a wrench into everything anyway, so screw it! Let's put this wonderful clusterfuck of a game into the timeline and make it official Hyrule history. Okay. Post-script writing add-on is done. Back to where we left off. I have to make quite a large confession. There are multiple parts of this game that, despite the tight storyline on paper, the end results are not very clear. Typical Zelda game. And in order to try and tell a complete story, I'm afraid I have to embrace my inner game theorist myself and not only try to explain away multiple plot holes and issues, but I'm also going to be making assumptions and adding a touch of fanfiction stuff to try to make sense of everything. Honestly, I'm fine with that, but I still wanted to add yet another disclaimer. I'll be sure to make very clear those moments where I have to start stitching together my own headcanons. Again, hopefully I won't get in too much trouble. This video is more meant to be entertaining as well as informative. Anyways, now that we have an idea of where we are, it's time for real to start the story off. Since we're going off the theory that Hyrule of the Musou era is taking place at the end of the Triumphant Child timeline, that means that we should probably shift our focus to the games within that timeline. Twilight Princess is up first on our journey, but what we need to know is super quick. Ganondorf dies. Yep, that's all we really need to know right now. Obviously more stuff comes up later, but let's not overwhelm ourselves here. I'll talk about the relevant stuff when it becomes relevant. Anyways, yes, Ganondorf is killed here. He is stabbed in the gut with the Master Sword by the hero of Twilight, and the Triforce of Power is ripped away from him. Or perhaps I should clarify that just his body is killed. His spirit manages to survive, but is soon enough sealed away in the Dark Realm by the hero of Twilight. I know that lots of people think that Ganon truly did die for real when the Triforce of Power vanished from his hand, but I would argue that his soul definitely survived, as I will explain later. Next up is, wow, I actually can't believe that I'm about to say this, but our next stop is at the end of Four Swords Adventures, the next game on the timeline. I was never able to complete this game to the end because, well, I don't have any friends. So I watched what happened on YouTube. The Four Sword is a sacred sword infused with the power of light, just like the Master Sword is. But unlike its superior counterpart, the Four Sword has a unique side effect. Anyone who touches it will have their soul split into pieces. The specific hero who wielded this particular sword was Pure of Heart, so when he wielded the sword, he split into 4 identical copies, and because there were now 4 of him, his power reasonably quadrupled. Now, I'm gonna take a shot in the dark here and say that because this sword is another evil vanquishing sword, this power to split the soul effect is not created equal among others who might try and either wield it or be struck by it. In fact, let's say that a being who is not pure of heart is affected by the side effects of this sword. What happens to this other individual then? Specifically, Ganon. At the end of the game, two different evils were sealed inside the Force Sword. One of them is the Wind Mage Vadi, who has been sealed in the sword multiple times by now, and is clearly not affected by the Force Sword splitting effects. The other evil is Ganon, who was revealed to be plotting his attack on Hyrule from behind the scenes the whole time, all while letting Vadi run wild across the land and distracting this incarnation of Link from discovering the true plan. Now, pay attention here, because I made a fatal mistake originally and do not want anyone else to get confused and make the same mistake. The Ganon we see here in Four Swords Adventures and the Ganon that we saw in Twilight Princess are two different individuals. They are not the same person. Hyrule Historia confirmed it. What? I know! I wrote a huge chunk of this script thinking that the Ganon we saw getting sealed in the Force Sword was the same one that got shish kebabbed a few centuries before. But they are not. And I had to throw out so much of my work and script because I wanted to be as accurate as possible. So please listen. You know about the Gerudo, yeah? The race of all-female warriors? Well, every 100 or so years, a male is born in the Gerudo tribe, and according to Gerudo tradition, this male is destined to lead the Gerudo as their chief. As was explained in Ocarina of Time. The only male Gerudo that we ever actually met was Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time, or so I thought. Turns out that in Four Swords Adventures, another male was born into the Gerudo tribe and became the chieftain as tradition before the events of the game began. This male Gerudo was also named Ganondorf, because of course it was, but unlike the first man who possessed that name, this Ganondorf did not remain the chieftain for very long, as by this point in Hyrule's history, the Gerudo wanted to peacefully integrate with the rest of the kingdom, and this second Ganondorf was just as much of a dirtbag as the first one, so he was ousted as chief and kicked out of the tribe by the Gerudo. He later steals a trident from a pyramid that houses dark magic, uses that trident to transform himself into a monster, and that explains why this Ganon looks so radically different than the one that we saw in Twilight Princess. Jesus Christ, I'm going to eat a brick. I am not spending any more time on this than I have to. Just know that we are dealing with two Ganons at the same time. One was just sealed in the Force Sword, whom I will be referring to as just Trident Ganon from here on out. And the other was killed by the Master Sword and is currently left as just a soul. This guy will be referred to as just Ganon/Ganondorf because it's this guy that we need to focus on more. I know that I'm skirting over why and how Ganondorf is still around as a spirit. I will get to it soon, but please, we need to move on. So the royal family, as well as whatever deities were available on Discord that day, band together and discussed the current situation. Vadi and Trident Ganon were no longer a threat to Hyrule, so as long as the seal on the Force Sword was periodically maintained. It's the Demon King that actually wielded the Triforce of Power that needed to be dealt with. Luckily, the spiritual forces of Hyrule had already entrusted the Triforce of Power to a worthy being after the events of Twilight Princess. But just letting Ganon's soul fester in the Dark Realm any longer definitely did not sound like a good idea. I'm sure a large discussion went underway, but it was ultimately decided upon to have Ganon's soul pulled from the Dark Realm and sealed away for good, this time by the power of the Master Sword.
And so it was, but this is where the Council of the Higher Power had a big brain moment. Hey, so we have the sword that we know can split souls into 4 separate pieces. Why don't we just, boop, and now he can't form into a complete being.
Big, you're a din-damned legend. Here are the keys to the neighboring dimension. You've earned it, man. Spread your knowledge to the rest of the multiverse. So both Vadi and Trident Ganon were kept sealed away in the Force Sword and placed back in the Sacred Chamber within Hyrule Castle itself. Finally back to a single Ganon for the rest of this video. Hey, no, you, get out of here! Meanwhile, the now 4 split pieces of the Demon King's soul were... well, one of the pieces was placed in the stone sealed away by the Master Sword, as was the plan. But the other 3 pieces? You know, I think I'll let Hyrule Warriors itself explain what happens next.
3 of the fragments were scattered across time and space. The final fragment was sealed in a sacred temple built upon holy ground, imprisoned by the blade of evil's bane.
I'm gonna be completely honest here. The part about using the Force Sword to split Ganon's soul into 4 pieces, I made that up! I literally just linked jigsaw pieces together that happened to be lying around and somehow made it reasonably coherent enough to pass as a potential lore theory. But literally moving the 4 shards of Ganon's soul and power across different eras? I did not make that up. This is the entire driving force that kickstarted this game, and it makes my four-sword theory feel so much more believable in comparison. And you know what? This was probably the smartest possible plan to try and stop Ganon's cycle of reincarnation I have ever seen. It fails, as we will soon see, but I gotta give credit where it's due. This was a damn good idea and concept, and there's no way that the ancients could have seen in advance why the plan wasn't going to work. It was honestly a stroke of genius. So now Ganon is trapped under the blinding power of the Master Sword. And on top of that, he's been quartered with the remaining 3 parts of him having been shoved into separate tombs that are then sealed away in different eras of Hyrule's giant timeline. Talk about next level containment. How the heck is he gonna reincarnate out of this situation? The good news is that despite his damn near god levels of power, Ganon does not have the ability to traverse the multiverse. The bad news is that he knows exactly who does possess that power, which brings us to the primary villain of this story before Ganon takes the helm. This is Sia, a sorceress tasked by the heavens to watch over the Triforce of Power and to protect the flow of time from being corrupted by evil intentions. This role gives Sia the ability to peer into both the past and possibly even the future, an ability which she uses to learn about the eras of Hyrule. Yeah, if you haven't put 2 and 2 together yet, this is who the gods entrusted the Triforce of Power to after it was stripped from Ganondorf. Sia is essentially a demigod, and her own natural power to use magic is immense. She has the ability to manipulate both light and dark magic, although based on her behavior, she seems more so used to dark magic than light. While watching over the eras of Hyrule's history, Sia becomes fascinated by the prospect of the hero, since every time Hyrule fell into ruin, a hero would rise up and restore the kingdom to its natural glory. I'll just say it like it is. Sia eventually falls in love with Link. I'm talking a deep emotional admiration and yes, possibly a hint of lust thrown in there. Except there's a problem. Okay, well, yes, Sia getting thirsty for the hero of Hyrule is a problem in of itself. But if you're a connoisseur of the Hyrule Historia, you might have caught on to a bit of a snag. Throughout the hero's journey to fight evil, what else, or who else, has appeared by the hero's side every time Hyrule was at its lowest point? No, not Epona!
Through her powers, the sorceress should have seen that the hero was bound to another. Instead, she saw only a soul that was unlike any she had known.
Oh no.
I should probably mention that Sia is not an inherently evil sorceress by any means, but I think we've all seen our fair share of high school love stories in our lives, and we all know what happens when a girl falls in love with a guy when another girl is already in the folds. Call me a harbinger of drama all you want, but I think Sia's daydreams involve engaging in some mean girl shit against Princess Zelda. And here comes Ganon, about to engage in some bad guy shit while Sia's distracted. Wait, hold up. How did Ganon get to where Sia lives, yet alone his soul, yet alone only a chunk of his soul, yet alone a chunk of his soul held in place by the Master Sword, when the other pieces of his soul aren't even theoretically in this timeline? Yeah, we should probably go back to Ganon for a bit and clear a few things up. So, something that I haven't really talked about yet, but probably should, is just how powerful Ganon actually is within the lore of The Legend of Zelda. The best way to put it is... very. I mentioned it in passing a few times so far, but we gotta take yet another detour to discuss the Triforce, as well as talk about a specific event that happened in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. The Triforce is a sacred artifact of Hyrule bestowed to the people by the goddesses who created the land. It consists of 3 pieces, and anyone who comes into possession of the full Triforce is not only bestowed with great power, but is capable of granting any wish desired. Again, there's more to it than that, but that's what you need to know. So now let's go back to the Nintendo 64. In Ocarina of Time, Ganon managed to enter the Sacred Realm, where the Triforce was literally being held at the time, and managed to actually grab it. And in doing so, was given, just a minor little ability that I like to call immortality. Every Zelda game takes place in different eras from each other, where it is heavily implied that each game is separated by hundreds of thousands of years, if not longer than that. So long is the passage of time between each game that Hyrule completely changes geographically, just as the continents on our Earth shift and move very slowly as depicted in our own history. And Ganondorf is gonna outlive all of that, thanks to the power given to him by the Triforce of Power alone. He survived a mortal blow from the Force Sword. His soul survived getting split into 4 pieces, and his soul, or I guess souls at this point, were still going strong after they were all sent to alternate timelines. That is why I argued that Ganon's soul could easily remain in Hyrule after his body was destroyed. And that's just the durability he possesses. This isn't even scratching the surface of the actual power he was bestowed by the Triforce. Going back to where we left off in the story of this game, a small fragment from his soul was able to freely drift to where Sia lived in a mystic forest and worm its way into her heart, despite that fragment coming from the part of his soul that was sealed by the Master Sword. A fraction of a spirit managed to corrupt a second spirit, one belonging to a demigoddess. I think my point has been made. Anyways, in his current state, Ganon is able to manipulate Sia, but not outright control her. He's like a disembodied voice whispering in her head. Honestly, for half of the game, I was convinced that Ganon was just puppeteering Sia or just straight up possessing her body, but that is not the case. Otherwise, Sia wouldn't be thirsting for the hero, especially after the moment where the other fragments of Ganon enter Sia's body. I will not even joke about that. Ganon is not gay for the hero. He is only gay for his own evil power.
But that is called
narcissism,
my dear children, and is in fact frowned upon in most societies.
But just to make it a bit easier to perform said manipulation, Ganon manages to wrest the light magic that Sia possessed and expel it from her own soul, leaving the sorceress only capable of using her dark abilities. This also has the added effect of warping Sia's methods, but not her motivations. If I want the hero to be my love, then I'll have to bring him to me, and to do that, I'll have to conquer Hyrule. Oh my god, why did I think that was a good idea? So, about that light magic that was yoinked out of Sia's body, I mentioned this before, but Sia is not technically mortal, and her own magic and overall power is so great that something interesting is bound to happen should anything wonky happen to Sia or her powers as a sorceress. Well, the light magic that was wrested from Sia didn't just fade away. The magic was so strong that it actually gained sentience and was capable of forming itself a soul. Yes, I didn't speculate this either. This is real, albeit worded a bit differently. With Ganon festering inside of Sia's soul, this new independent soul of light could not return to Sia's body, and so it had no other choice but to permanently remain split from Sia and flee from the Sacred Realm into the land of Hyrule, where it would eventually plan to form a separate body for itself. Or should I say herself, because she is eventually successful in doing this. But I imagine creating a body out of light magic takes some time, since we didn't see this magical being attempt to fight back as soon as it was expelled from Sia. So for now, let's just let her go her own way and see where this magical new soul ends up later. We've got bigger problems to deal with at the moment. Yeah, Ganon's influence is definitely not causing Sia to think straight, but I guess that's kind of the point, since Sia is only a means to an end. Ganon's plan is to eventually discard Sia and conquer Hyrule once again, but in order to do that, he needs to reunite his spirit if he wants to be at full power. Okay, so Ganon has Sia now, so what's the next part of the plan? Well, remember how I explained earlier that Sia's role as the Guardian of Time is to observe the flow of Hyrule's history to make sure it can't be interfered with by dark means? Well, the methods of which she can perform such a duty is by use of another sacred artifact, the Gate of Souls. This artifact allows whoever possesses it the ability to link worlds and eras of time together, which we will see plenty of creative uses for throughout this story. Even if you do have the power to use the gate, you'd still need to understand how to use it, as we see multiple people interact with the Gate of Souls, but nobody was really able to actually control it outside of Sia. Mostly because, well, it was hers to begin with. As for Ganon, well, maybe if he was fully restored and had complete control of Sia, he could use the gate, but being quartered, entombed, and stuck in multiple timelines is kind of the reason why he wanted this gate in the first place. So he influences Sia to fling open the Gate of Souls herself with the power she does have, and that's still plenty of magic, enough to summon a near endless army of monsters from different parts of Hyrule's history to serve under Sia. And with this new army under her control, Sia is now ready to start conquering Hyrule to bring about her dreams. Which means we can finally start talking about the story we actually see and experience in Hyrule Warriors 1. Let's go! Oh wait, that's not Zelda. What am I doing? Well, Sia has an army, but what's an army without a general? So after hearing of a powerful monster living in the Elden Caves, Sia's first move is to recruit this monster into her army. Once she and her forces enter the cave, Sia meets Volga, an obvious callback to Vivaldia from Ocarina of Time. But in the lore, this is a different fiery dragon with the power to take a human form. And Volga uses this form to tell Sia to go get bent. Cia simply laughs, and this leads to the first battle on this game's timeline. During Cia's assault, she stumbles upon some Gorons attempting to destroy a cursed ring, and steals the ring from them before it can be casted into the fire. Cia activates the ring, which releases the dark spirit that was contained within, Wizro, who is a nod to the Wizrobes from the 2D Zelda games. Cia offers him a place in her army, and Wizro accepts, but it's clear to Cia that she should keep an eye on this monster for reasons we will quickly see for ourselves. Volga and his army of dragons continue their defense, but it's apparent that Cia has the superior army. Nonetheless, Volga orders a final charge. Seeing an opportunity to take control of the summoned monsters, Wizro quickly switches sides and begins to ravage Cia's main camp. See what I mean? The character Wizro is the dictionary definition of the word rat, and the writers play this out so hard to where it's honestly a bit groan-inducing.
Why are you the way that you are?
Cia subdues both of them, and once they are brought before her, she enchants them with a loyalty spell to ensure that they remain in her army. This spell is not permanent and will wear off eventually, but until then, Cia now has 2 loyal generals to help lead her army alongside her. It's time to start the invasion. Where are they going next? Exactly where you think they're going. Okay, so quick spoilers. I'm explaining this game's story from a chronological perspective going off of how the events of the story would have actually played out, in order of what happened first all the way to what happens last, including the bonus epilogue chapter. When playing the game itself, the player follows the perspective of the Hyrulean army, mostly Link, so you don't actually see the complete story in order of when they actually happened. The battle we just witnessed between Volga and Cia was the first battle that happened on the timeline, but you don't actually get to play this battle until after you beat the main campaign. Cia's name doesn't actually drop onto the player until 2 or 3 battles in. I'm mentioning this to you all here because we have only now reached the opening cutscene of Hyrule Warriors, and suddenly jump cutting to Zelda frolicking in Hyrule filled with a harp would have certainly been funny, but still very jarring to those who may not have played this game or haven't played it in forever. So anyways, the game actually starts with, again, Princess Zelda playing her beloved harp in an open Hyrule field, when all of a sudden, she is swallowed by an all-consuming darkness! Ayo! Yeah, that was just silly. But it seems that this wasn't the first nightmare Zelda has had in recent times. The princess confides to her retainer Impa that the dreams might have a darker meaning. Impa lends an ear and suggests that if the dreams are to be believed as an omen, then they should consider searching for the chosen hero of Hyrule. The two venture to a lookout above the castle courtyard, discussing where to look for this new hero, where Zelda looks down at the newer recruits and found him! Oh my, come on. You know, I love this game to death, but now that I'm actually explaining the story in detail, I can't help but admit that this entire first scene is cracking me up. First of all, why are the chosen hero's clothes just sitting on that desk next to Zelda's bed if that was Impa's first suggestion of looking for the hero? If Impa and Zelda have discussed the hero before now and the outfit they had was part of the discussion, why not put the clothes in a more reasonable spot, like in a study of sorts? I get that Zelda just woke up mere seconds ago, which would explain why she's talking with Impa at that spot, but if they did talk about the hero before, I kinda doubt they would have been talking about that subject in Zelda's bedroom. Speaking of this room, was Impa already here when Zelda woke up? Were you watching her sleep? Also, don't you think that looking for the legendary reborn hero of Hyrule is just a bit of an overreaction given the circumstances that you two discussed? I know that omens are a real possibility in the Legend of Zelda universe, and I am also very aware that Cia is quite literally marching an army towards Hyrule Castle right now, but both of you are completely unaware of that fact. Not even the player would have knowledge of that yet. If you're playing this game fresh, this scene is the first time you ever see the Dark Army. As far as Zelda and Impa are aware, all they have to go on are the princess's recurring dreams, and they've already jumped straight to DEF CON 2. And what are the odds that Zelda and Impa agree to start looking for the hero only to have Zelda look down and the first person she locks eyes with at the training grounds is Link? I actually don't have any real problems with any of this. I just find the whole situation comical. Link is just there, and we all know he's the chosen hero, but at least Age of Calamity gave that particular version of Link just a bit of wiggle room to prove himself in battle first, and then meet Zelda after being acknowledged by King Rome. Again, it's fine. I'm just having a goof. At the same time that Impa and Zelda are observing the new soldiers, Cia's army has almost reached Hyrule Field. This prompts the two of them to put the hero-searching situation aside for now and ready for battle to help defend the castle. The new recruits, Link included, remain in the castle while the genuine Hyrule soldiers follow Zelda and Impa onto the battlefield. Before Cia and her army reach Hyrule Field, she is encouraged by Wizro to either capture or eliminate the fairies, as they could easily heal and even revive Zelda's forces during their assault. Cia agrees and orders a manhunt of the fairy species throughout Hyrule as they continue their march. Most fairies that were attacked managed to flee to Hyrule Field, which, a bit of bad luck, seeking refuge at the one location where the army was heading for in the first place. Luckily for the fairies, by the time Cia actually reaches Hyrule Field, she discovers that the fairies have found several protectors, a group of local Gorons, and it's this person. I hate to be that guy, but have we met before? Well, as it turns out, we already have met this mysterious girl before, as the sentient being composed of light magic that was forced out of Cia by Ganon. This is Lana, having created a body for herself and quite literally originating as a fraction of Cia's magic. It's no wonder that Lana's new form looks very similar. Naturally, Cia immediately recognizes who Lana is and attacks her as well as the fairies. Although she has a body now, Lana is not even close to matching Cia's power yet and is put on the defensive along with the Gorons. The Invasion Begins is another battle that you play after defeating the final boss, and that fits rather well because this battle has one of the more difficult mission quests that can be thrown at you. As soon as the battle starts, you got 3 Gorons in the south and 3 Gorons in the north, all heading to Hyrule Castle for aid, and the implication is that you have to defeat all 6 of them, otherwise you're told that you have to deal with the entire Hyrulean army at once. Well, unless you know that this shit is coming ahead of time, there is no way you can defeat all 6 before at least one makes it to the castle checkpoint, and even if you do plan ahead, they all pick up the pace the more you defeat. I couldn't actually remember the in-game consequences should you let the Gorons escape, so for the sake of this video, I actually played this level thrice. The first time I played on easy difficulty just to make getting the story footage easier, and the second time I tried to defeat the Gorons on hard mode, which is actually the difficulty I played on for pretty much the whole game, and then continued the battle even if some of the Gorons escaped to see what actually happens. In case you're wondering, nothing happens. I let one Goron escape and defeated the other 5, and other than a few dialogue changes, nothing actually changed that would affect the difficulty or the story. After learning this, I jumped back in a third time and let all 6 escape just to see what would happen. Again, nothing major. If you let 3 or more of them reach the castle, Lana just gains morale and becomes a lot harder to beat. The Hyrulean army doesn't actually come out until she is defeated, so I'm just kinda bummed. I never actually tried to fail that side mission, so I was hoping that you'd lose the battle and Cia would just yell at Wizro and Volga. Well, that's a letdown. Losing to Wizro and Volga, Lana is forced to flee Hyrule Field and the fairies scatter away from the armies in a panic. One fairy in particular, named Proxy, flees into the training grounds where the soldiers are preparing to charge and where the monsters have yet to reach. Zelda enters the battlefield with the soldiers not long after this, and the moment she sees Zelda, Cia flies into a rage and orders her army to completely ignore the fairies to kill Zelda. Man, you can taste the overwhelming jealousy of Zelda for Link. And Cia hasn't met either of them yet at this point. Seeing the flow of battle tip towards Cia's side, Impa soon joins the battle as well, but is defeated by the overwhelming number of monsters. At this point, Cia believes that the hero wouldn't appear during this battle and decides to pull back, ordering Wizro and Volga to reach and kill Zelda for her. Talk about cockiness. And honestly, they get pretty damn close. Volga manages to reach the training grounds and wipe out enough of the soldiers to where the only thing that stands between him and Hyrule Castle is a bridge. Impa forces herself back to the battlefield and calls for a final desperation attack, pleading for anyone who can fight at all to stand strong. Hearing that call to arms, Link grabs a training sword from the armory and dashes into the limelight. Yeah, so this is still the same battle, just split in half between perspectives. When playing the actual game, after seeing Zelda and Impa stand before Cia's army, the cutscene actually continues into this part, where it's implied that the Hyrulean forces are losing pretty badly as per the discussion being had by these trainees. Once the cutscene actually ends, we start the first battle of the main campaign, which is funny when we look at what I already discussed myself. All of that, and only now have we reached the tutorial on this timeline. Thank you, Proxy. Link crosses the bridge and begins laying waste to the monsters that were about to enter the castle grounds, surprising Impa. With the training ground now swamped with monsters, Proxy begins to panic, but after seeing Link, rushes over and hides within him. The two quickly become friends during the struggle. It's actually kinda cute what they did with Link in terms of dialogue. He's not a silent stand-in for the player in this game. He's a fully established character who just doesn't like to talk. So in situations where Link would have to say something, Proxy talks in his stead. Because of that, we get some really adorable dialogue from Proxy for Link and some cute pseudo-interactions between the two of them. Link, Proxy, and Impa enter the nearby garrison where Volga is, and the standoff becomes intense. Link proves that his strength is no joke, but it's still not enough to stop Volga, who nearly wipes him out. Just after he thought he landed the finishing blow, the Triforce of Courage awakens within Link, and the realization of this forces Volga to retreat. Talk about a close call. Link and Impa soon rendezvous with Zelda, and the three seal off the monstrous army in the north from advancing. They continue their advance, and after a devastating blow to the remaining monsters in the south, Impa encourages Zelda to fall back to the castle to ensure her safety. Unfortunately, Wizzro had a surprise trump card in case they began to lose the battle, and opts to use it before it's too late. That trump card is a giant fire-breathing monster known to all Zelda fans as King Dodongo, who rolls into one of the sealed gates and after smashing it, begins his march towards Hyrule Castle. Wizzro disappears with glee, leaving Impa, Link, and the rest of the Hyrulean army scrambling to kill this thing before it shreds open the doors and knocks the whole castle down like a bowling ball. And this gives me an opportunity for me to talk briefly about the mechanic of the giant bosses. In my humble opinion, the one blight upon this masterpiece of a game. King Dodongo is one of the better bosses, but as a whole, these guys suck. Most of them require a specific item to take down, and in order to use these items on the bosses, you have to wait for them to try and use a specified attack, and on the chance of them actually using that one specified attack is random. If you're unlucky, you might have to wait for a long time before they finally decide to hit you with that one move. On top of that, if you don't use the item in time, then they'll finish their attack and force you to wait for them to use the attack again. And if you're really unskilled or unlucky, you might have taken damage from that attack, because again, you have to try and use an item on a boss which is actively attacking you. And using items in general leaves you vulnerable to any attacks, yet alone attacks coming from the giant boss. On top of that, even if you land that item's attack successfully, depending on the difficulty set, you then have to launch a barrage of hits on the giant boss before they can get back up. And even on top of that, most of them have a wickedly high health bar, way higher than they deserve. And even on top of that, oh, this rant is going on for far too long. Point of the story is, the giant bosses are the only part of the game that I do not like. Everything else is absolutely wonderful. And because I love this game so much, I have stomached the giant bosses this whole time. Honestly, they're not that bad once your warriors are high enough level, but still, they're more annoying than anything else. And with that rant, I feel much better now. Back to the story. Unfortunately, King Dodongo is just a ruse. While Impa and Link were dealing with this annoying dinosaur, Wizzro took the opportunity to infiltrate and ravage the castle. And by the time the beast is slain, it's too late. Wizzro and Zelda have both disappeared. Impa thanks Link for stepping in when Hyrule needed him most and enlists his help once more to aid in the search for Zelda. Link, of course, agrees, and Impa hands him the heroic tunic. Can't turn down this request now, boy! We've all seen your hand. News of Hyrule Castle falling into chaos quickly spreads throughout the towns and villages of Hyrule, eventually reaching an unnamed village nearby the Faron Woods. A few of the villagers start discussing the situation amongst each other, which springs a certain best character in the game into action, introducing us to f***ing Linkle. Oh my god, they actually did it. They went ahead and added the most fan service character ever into the fan service Zelda game, and I am all for it. They could have made her just a simple reskin for Link, but they didn't. They made her a separate character with her own fleshed out personality and literally made her one of the best characters in the game. Like, you don't understand. I love this girl. Oh, wait. I should probably explain who this is within the story of the game, not within the meta. Linkle lives in a village that specializes in cuckoo farming, and as such, she dual wields a pair of crossbows as a form of defense against any wolves that may try to attack her livestock. Yeah, so her entire playstyle is one big nod to Link's crossbow training. And you know you're playing a real love letter to the Zelda universe when you're referencing the tutorial bonus game that came bundled with the bloody Wii Zapper. I love Hyrule Warriors so much. Anyways, Linkle was told by her grandmother that she is destined to grow up to be the legendary hero of Hyrule, and it turns out that Linkle was invested in that belief. So, the moment that the villagers passed the news about Hyrule Castle, Linkle wasted no time suiting up in green and literally begins to sprint towards Hyrule Castle. I sense a recurring joke in our midst. Linkle wanders into the Faron Woods and is immediately pranked and preyed upon by the Skull Kid? Oh shit, we really are getting bombarded by fan service, aren't we? Unfortunately, from a lore perspective, Skull Kid being here makes zero sense, and is a wickedly large plot hole in terms of the Hyrule Warriors timeline. But you'll have to forgive me on this one. Not only do I love Linkle to where her battles are some of my favorites to replay, besides one, but I also really wanted the Skull Kid to be a playable character since all the way back in 2014, when they started revealing who would be playable in the teasers and trailers. And not only do they eventually release him as a playable warrior for the 3DS port and the later Switch port, but then they give him a full fun cameo in the story mode? Yeah, plot holes, schmot holes. I don't care. I love this. More fan service, please. Yes, I am the problem. Skull Kid pounces onto Linkle and steals her compass, prompting Linkle to chase after him and get it back. So I'm gonna make an assumption that this compass in particular is another sacred artifact of some kind. At the very least, it has some kind of light magic enchantment to it, but I couldn't tell you what the enchantment actually is. It honestly just kinda Deus Ex Machinas Linkle out of multiple dire situations, and yeah, that is a bit silly at times, but it really doesn't matter what magic it can do. To Linkle, this compass is proof that she's the reincarnated hero, and that means that no matter what, she's determined to get it back, even if it means fighting a puppet of an absolute evil. Thankfully for Linkle, Majora hasn't actually reached that level of brainwashing yet, so Skull Kid is still in his very petty, albeit just a bit dangerous pranking phase, and remains in that phase for the entirety that we see him in the story. This battle isn't really anything crazy, it's just a one-on-one showdown between two of the fan favorites, but that's fine, I'm having fun. Eventually the battle ends in Linkle's favor, and she does get the compass back. Skull Kid promises not to bother Linkle anymore, which sounds a bit anticlimactic, but it's pretty on brand for this character, so I'll let it slide. Linkle begins mad dashing out of the forest. Destination? Hyrule Castle. Is she going the right way? Most likely not. With Impa standing at the head of the search party, the forces of Hyrule begin to hunt down the Twisted Wizard, believing him to be the leader of the Dark Army since, you know, they haven't met Sia yet. During their search, they hear rumors that a faction of soldiers have been fighting with the monsters in the Faron Woods, led by, quote, a young woman. So possibly Zelda? Well, you heard him, boys! Let's go track down this bombshell of a lead! In order to reach the forest, they have to maneuver through the Elden Caves. Oh, we're back here again. Well, the good news is that not long after this, we'll be seeing a plethora of new locations. Unfortunately, this will also be the last time we'll be visiting these caves in the story. Anyways, the group is ambushed by Wizro's faction once again, who quickly tries to cave them in. He fails, but does manage to trap the army into a pincer attack. I doubt Impa and Link were in any real danger here, but they're still just a tad outnumbered. Well, good news is that a new challenger approaches to give the Hyrulean army a boost. Oh, they're doing this again, are they? I mean, they are rescued by a mysterious individual claiming to have a relation with the Sheikah tribe, who assists them in escaping these caves. Just who is this mysterious youth? Neither Impa nor Link have a clue. With Sheik's help, Impa and Link escape Wizro's clutches from the Elden Caves, but we seem to have another problem on our hands. We know that Wizro stormed Hyrule Castle not too long ago, and both himself and Zelda vanished immediately after. So when the Hyrulean forces clash with Wizro's forces again in the caves, Zelda should have been here too, at the mercy of Wizro. But she's not here. So what happened to Princess Zelda between then and now? I guess that really means that she is in the forest, and it sounds like she's with a handful of soldiers too. Regardless, perhaps it's time to pick up the pace before that stupid wizard rears his ugly head again. Onwards to the Faron Woods! Speaking of Faron Woods, it's time to break my own heart and reveal that the young woman who is leading the charge of resistance there can't be Linkle. This is because we already know she left the woods after clashing with the Skull Kid. So, if it's not Linkle, then who is leading the rebellion in Faron Woods, Yatzlana? I'd be more dramatic about it, but at this point we've run out of young woman suspects. If we were following the story in the order the game presents to us, then this would be the battle where the player first meets Lana. At the very least, this is the first time that the Hyrulean forces meet Lana, since Sia drove her away from Hyrule Field before she could reach the castle herself. Lana asks them for assistance in defending the villages of the forest, who immediately set out to halt not only the monsters that were already here, but also Wizro, who once again caught up to the Hyrulean army. 5 dead Deku Babas followed by 3 obnoxious Gibdos later, and Lana declares sanctuary in the Great Deku Tree. Wizro responds by setting the tree on fire. Wait, you can do that? Hang on, if that was always an option, then why didn't Ganondorf do that in Ocarina of Time to get the stone needed to reach the Triforce? I mean, don't get me wrong, his final plan worked. Oh, but I guess Wizro's plan to burn down the tree doesn't work, because the Great Fairy of the Forest steps in and causes a rainfall, saving the Deku Tree from burning down. So I guess Ganondorf had a better plan from the beginning. Well, Wizro isn't the brightest undead light bulb in the shack. All Ganondorf had to do was summon the giant spider monster known as Goma, and the tree died. Huh. Fair enough, I guess, but you only summoned her after Link and Lana were about to reach your base and beat the shit out of you. What Ganon did was strategy. Wizro's just being a weasel here.
Pathetic.
Also, sorry if I accidentally call this character Wizwo instead of Wizro at any point in this video. It's a tick that my friends and I developed from playing this game for way too long. Anyways, the Hyrulean forces squash the bug and Wizwo finally flees after attempting to chase them up until now. The Faron village, as well as the Deku Tree, are safe, but Zelda is still missing. As thanks for defending the area with her, Lana reveals to Link and Impa about Sia's intentions, specifically her goal to conquer Hyrule. Lana even chooses to disclose the reason why Sia wants the Triforce to the Hyrulean forces. You know, that? Although that might have just been the narrator simply explaining things to the player, a bit hard to tell in these cutscenes admittedly. Also, before I forget to mention, during the battle, Lana told him a little white lie that she's from the same magical clan as Sia, which I suppose is true from a certain point of view. Regardless, Lana joins the party. Hooray! So here's the problem. Even though the forces under Impa won essentially every battle they fought in so far, that does not change the reality that Sia's forces of monsters have conquered Central Hyrule. You know, the part of Hyrule that most of the people live in? Yeah, when Sia flung open the Gate of Souls and began to summon monsters, I didn't do a good job explaining how many monsters were being pulled through those portals. I'll just let the game explain.
Although the monsters of Faron Woods had been defeated, Sia still controlled most of Hyrule. Every day, more creatures appeared and swarmed the land. Link and Impa fought on against the darkness, sorely missing Zelda's leadership. Only one solution remained: stem the tide of monsters by closing the Gate of Souls.
So honestly, we don't have a choice here. We have to go straight to the source and close that damn gate. We need to face off against Sia. It's now or never. This takes us to the Valley of Seers, where Sia has set up her home base at the top of some ancient ruins. With Volga standing as the only real obstacle, Link manages to reach Sia in no time, with Sheik in support right behind him. At last, Sia can finally get an eyeful of the hero of Hyrule, and you can tell she's beyond excited. Of course, because it was me that said that, Sia immediately disappears from the battlefield, but not before summoning a monster of her own. Oh goody, another giant boss battle. Who is it this time? Look, I don't know what the public opinion is on which boss is ranked the most unpopular among the fans, but for me, the worst is easily Manhandla. Don't get me wrong, this boss is a great nod to the first ever Zelda game, but I hate fighting against this plant so much, I'm just going to skip it. Click! So Manhandla is defeated after playing hide and seek, and everyone joins up with Link and Sheik back on top of the ruins. Unfortunately, it was a trap. Sia only threw Manhandla at us to give herself extra time. Let me explain what happened, because they blasted through this part pretty quickly. When Link approached Sia the first time, the latter was preparing to use the Triforce of Power, which Sia is the current rightful owner of, to wrest the Triforce of Courage from Link, which everyone including her knew he had. However, Sheik showed up to support Link at the last second, which meant that Sia couldn't steal the Triforce at that exact moment. While that was a good play on paper, unfortunately Sia was able to detect at this moment that something was odd about Sheik. A power that Sia wasn't expecting, but knew that it was absolutely valuable. So, as a change of plans, the sorceress summoned the stupid penis monster to stall the Hyrulean army while she prepared to steal Sheik's power as well as Link's, which brings us back here. Sia activates a magic circle which rips the Triforce of Courage right out of Link's body. But wait, what the heck did Sheik have that Sia wanted so badly? Is that the Triforce of Wisdom? No wonder Sia uprooted her original plan. She thought Zelda had that, and Zelda is currently missing. Not sure how much longer I can keep it held in. The things I do for storytelling. Anyways, Sia now has all 3 pieces of the Triforce. So it's over now, right? Sia has access to everlasting and peerless power. This is where all of Hyrule falls, yeah? Well, no. Firstly, because all Cia really wanted was to be with Link. Getting her hands on the Triforce and conquering Hyrule was just a means to an end, so we can rule unending destruction off the table, at least for now. More importantly, there's actually a critical fact about the Triforce that I neglected to mention until now. The power of the Triforce, well, it can't be harnessed by gods. Now, I get that Cia isn't a god, and I realize that some people might have tried to call me out when I described her as a demigod much earlier, but she's certainly not a human, or a Hylian, or whatever, and yes, Cia can absolutely utilize the Triforce of power because, you know, it was hers to begin with. But I guess the ultimate point here is that Cia cannot use the full power of the Triforce to grant her deepest wish. Not that she would have anyway, because do you remember why Cia was doing all this in the first place? Yep, as soon as Cia completes the Triforce, Ganon springs into action and uses Cia's body to fuel the Gate of Souls. As our heroes flee, the gate becomes so juiced up with power that this thing literally starts to bend time and space. With Dialga and Palkia both getting mind-fucked by this confusing artifact, the 3 fragments of Ganon's spirit that were entombed in the different eras of time become capable of honing in on Cia. And with this spiritual link, the Gate of Souls unleashes the ultimate power that it possesses. The Hyrule that we've been fighting for all this time begins to literally link up, for lack of a better term, with the 3 eras of Hyrule that housed a sealed fragment of Ganon. And when the dust finally settles, we have 4 different Hyrules crudely mashed together, with each era now holding its own Gate of Souls. Which means, of course, now we have 4 individual Gates of Souls pouring monsters all over the place. Ah, but of course again, we're not done. With all 3 eras now existing at the same time, the 3 fragments of Ganon bust out of their tombs and soar straight into Cia's body. So Ganon is now 3/4 complete. If Cia wasn't brainwashed before, she absolutely has to be now. After all, we've already seen what Ganon is capable of with just a fraction of his power. Yeah, as much as I love our mighty King Bowser, may his reign never cease, he's got absolutely nothing on Ganondorf. Okay, despite housing 3 of the 4 fragments of the Demon King, Cia is still somewhat lucid. Somehow. How Cia hasn't realized she's being played is beyond me at this point, but I suppose it's time to move on. It's time for... The Hyrulean army is safe, confused as hell, but unwavered by these recent events. Cia's dark forces now have control over most of Hyrule that we know of, and now we suddenly have 3 more iterations of Hyrule to deal with thanks to the Gate of Souls. So I think it's safe to say that the Hyrulean army should take a step back and regroup before they plan their next move. This next part of the game is confusing from a timeline perspective, because the mission select screen is not displayed in an accurate way to reflect the correct order of events. The big 6 battles that cover the Hyrulean forces' movements are pretty much fine where they are. It's everything else branching around those that I had a lot of trouble piecing together. I actually had to chart a timeline diagram to help me figure out who was where using context clues, specifically because this part can be a pain in the butt. But I think I figured out the correct sequence of events. And with this diagram I made, I can be a little more relaxed when it comes to jumping around erratically like we have been, and I hope to let certain story beats flow into each other. Try not to be too confused if I backtrack every now and then when jumping to a different era of Hyrule. There's still a lot to cover, and splitting them all up just to follow the timeline consistently would be a bit silly to do. I'll make sure to clarify as best as I can which battles are taking place concurrently with each other while trying to explain the story in full, and hopefully I do a good job. So, you know who isn't discombobulated by this earth-shattering event? Cia, Volga, and Wizrow, since, you know, Cia was half responsible for this in the first place. So now that we've conquered base Hyrule, it's time to conquer these 3 new branching Hyrules as well. Not long after the dust settles and the forces of Hyrule are figuring out what in the world just happened, one of the new lands in particular begins emanating a certain power. The power of Twilight. Noticing this for herself, Cia takes action with Wizrow and Volga in tow and chooses to head to the source of the power for a checkup before doing anything else. So what is going on in the southwestern corner of the map? Remember all the way back at the beginning when I said that the ancients chained Ganon's quartered soul into tombs, which were then sealed away throughout the different eras of Hyrule? Well, it's pretty obvious that one of the tombs was placed within the era of Twilight. With that in mind, where was the tomb actually placed once it was brought to this particular era? Well, it's important to know that by the time Cia/Ganon connected to this era, the events of Twilight Princess have already taken place. Which means that Midna has already shattered the Mirror of Twilight, and that means that travel between Hyrule Hyrule and the Twilight Realm should have been impossible, at least not without divine help of some kind. I admit that I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but with the mirror shattered and the passageway between the two realms seemingly severed, what better place for the gods to seal away a chunk of Ganon's soul than within the royal palace of the realm thought to be forever cut off from Hyrule, under the rulership of the one woman in the realm who saw firsthand the malice of Ganon's power. Yeah, it's not that much of a stretch to believe that after the events of Twilight Princess, Midna would agree to watch over the tomb in her palace, especially if she believed that no mortal being would be able to get back in there. So I can imagine her absolute shock when, all of a sudden, a magical artifact suddenly apparates inside the Palace of Twilight right in front of the tomb. But that portal alone probably wouldn't alarm her that much, at least not compared to the shock she probably did experience when a familiar-faced Midna thought she had killed suddenly rears his head to once again challenge the throne for the Twilight Realm. Yeah, Midna killed Zant via explosion. So I'm sure if anyone is questioning how this guy managed to come back to life, it would be Midna. That was admittedly a bit of a complicated explanation, so let me rephrase it now that we got some context cleared up. After the Convergence connected both the Hyrule within that era as well as the Palace of Twilight within the Twilight Realm directly, Midna rushed into the room that housed the soul to discover that the tomb was now empty and a gate of souls was pouring monsters endlessly into the palace. On top of that, she also discovers a mysteriously revived Zant back within the Twilight Realm, who challenges Midna's right to the throne, just like he did before he was assassinated. The two clash almost immediately, using the monsters in the palace at their disposal. During this battle, a third faction somehow arrives into the Twilight Realm and storms the palace. Sia's faction. Keep in mind, Sia felt the power of Twilight rising as a result of Midna and Zant fighting almost immediately after Link and the rest of the Hyrulean army were forced to flee the Valley of Seers. It was that quick. Upon arriving at the Palace of Twilight, Sia, Wizro, and Volga immediately conclude that Zant is the weaker-minded of the two and easier to manipulate. So they agree to take down Midna and force Zant to join Sia's forces. Sia blasts her way to Midna and... wait a minute. Alright, so I hate to be that guy once again, but if we are actually trying to follow the timeline of events, at this point Midna should actually be in her true Twilight form and not her cursed imp form when she runs into Sia here in this fight. However, unlike with the Skull Kid, I actually know the reason why Midna is depicted incorrectly here. For those of you who don't know, Sia's playable battles in the base game all come from the same DLC pack, the Master Quest. And the DLC pack that included Midna's true form as a playable warrior came out after the Master Quest pack. I suppose they didn't want to reveal through a DLC story mission that a playable Twilight Midna was coming, so the devs just left Midna in her imp form for this fight and called it a day. It's also heavily implied that it was immediately after this fight was concluded that Midna became an imp again, and I guess they didn't want to create a cinematic cutscene to show this? I mean, I don't care all that much, but I'm still trying to be consistent here. I'll put the speculation disclaimer on the corner again for this battle, just to be safe as I go through what happens here all the same. Just keep in mind that for the majority, if not the entirety of this fight, Midna is supposed to look like this. Sia recognizes Midna as the Princess of the Twilight Realm and proceeds to absolutely cold clock her, forcing Midna to flee the palace almost immediately after Sia's forces join the fight. Zant revels over this fact and declares himself the true king of the Twilight people. However, he then declares war on Sia, calling her an interloper, and orders his army of monsters to charge at Sia's own army. Sia is just amused by this and chooses to have Zant submit to her by force, which goes great. Until Zant summons Argarok to attack her main base. With Volga remaining behind to protect the base, Sia and Wizro team up to smite Argarok. Their success frightens Zant, who attempts to flee using a magic circle. This fails, as Sia catches up and breaks Zant into submission. Zant accepts defeat and is forced to serve Sia in her own army. However, she does allow him to remain at the Palace of Twilight and protect the Gate of Souls within, since it's still pouring monsters out. During their departure from the palace, Midna intercepts Sia and attempts to strike back before setting her sights on the Palace of Twilight. Sia again beats her rather one-sidedly, and this time, to add insult to injury, uses her sorcery to curse Midna, transforming her back into the shape she was stuck in during the events of Twilight Princess. I guess Sia prepared beforehand on her GameCube before marching into the Twilight Realm. None of that last part happens on screen, by the way. We don't get to witness Sia curse Midna, but we know that's what happened, as we will see later. Humiliated, transformed against her will and beaten by Sia not once, but twice, Midna is forced to flee the Twilight Realm into Hyrule, but not before scooping up several monsters dropped from the Gate of Souls and preparing to launch a full-scale revenge attack later on. So, while all of that bunk was going on in the Twilight Realm, it turns out that another conflict was taking place elsewhere within a separate era that was pulled in by the Convergence. So we have Sia making movements in the Palace of Twilight. What, or who, else is making movements throughout this jigsaw puzzle of a messed up Hyrule? Answer: Girahim. Wait, what? It's time to talk very briefly about The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword. Or rather, make a disclaimer about it. See, I never actually played Skyward Sword myself. Don't worry, I fully intend to, and it's on my list. But maybe talking about a game I haven't played is not the smartest move. If I bork up the Zelda lore any more than I might already have, the Zelda fans might team up with the Ace Attorney fans and hurl me off of Eagle River. Alright, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna print out all the parts of the script that involve the plot of Skyward Sword and have someone who has played the game to peer review it for any lore mistakes or oversights. Give me a quick moment and I'll let you know how that goes. Alright, so I got it checked, and according to my anonymous source over on twitch.tv/Wynter_Dusk, I've been cleared to continue. So, any and all inaccuracies will now fall onto Wynter. Thanks for covering for me, man.
Wait, no.
Yep, thanks for the shield. Back to the video now, bye! Unlike in Twilight Princess, where the events of the game had already concluded by the time Sia converged the worlds, when the Hyrule of the Musou era was connected to the era of the Sky, it was actually linked up to a period of time before the events of Skyward Sword actually happened in universe. There's a lot of clear points to prove this, but I'll just stick with the easiest. The Goddess Sword is still sitting within its pedestal in the statue of Hylia in Skyloft, with Fi present within its blade, fully conscious. At this point in time during this era, Demise, the demon, has not been completely revived and subsequently has not been killed yet by the Hero of the Skies. I bring all that up because immediately after the Convergence, the Demon Lord Girahim had made his way to the sealed grounds below Skyloft in an attempt to revive Demise with a ritual. Once there, he discovers the Gate of Souls that formed in the Sealed Temple, and decides to use the power emanating from it to help revive Demise. Fi senses a great disturbance and pulls herself out of the pedestal to face the impending threat. Girahim attempts the ritual and fails miserably, spawning, little tiny foot monsters. These monsters appear just as a certain young woman clad in green arrives at the top of the sealed grounds. Wait, what? How? So you're telling me that after leaving the Faron Forest, Linkle ended up going in the opposite direction of where Hyrule Castle was? Look at this map. Linkle started here, with her goal being a straight shot south, and yet she ended up all the way on the northwestern corner of the land, not even realizing she wandered into a completely different era? I am absolutely blown away. That is impressive. As Girahim so elegantly points out, the ritual failed because the monsters that spawned out of the Gate of Souls have not yet seized the entire sealed grounds, which I suppose needs to be done in order to summon the real imprisoned. So in Skyward Sword, I guess Girahim needed Zelda in order to revive the imprisoned into his true form. This is because of a sacred seal placed by the goddess Hylia to literally imprison both Demise and his great evil power, taking the form of, well, definitely not these little guys, but the shape is the same. Just much bigger, which I suppose could be an intimidating looking representation of the Demon Master, if you squint a bit. And it seems that while the power flowing from the Gate of Souls isn't the right kind of magic for Girahim to actually bust that seal off his master's head, it is powerful enough to summon Demise in his sealed form out of his prison beneath the ground. But we're not there yet. After all, Girahim failed the ritual. How failing the ritual manages to create these little baby imprisons? I guess we can chalk it up to the Gate of Souls' ability to bridge time and space. I've been told that you fight the imprisoned like 4 times in Skyward Sword, and each time you deal with it, it gets more annoying. Man, fighting the imprisoned sounds irritating. Thank God we don't have to deal with that here in Hyrule Warriors. Now that both Fi and Linkle have arrived at the sealed grounds, independently of each other, I should point out, we can safely say that the ritual definitely won't work now. And this infuriates Girahim to the point where he begins summoning barrage after barrage to take control of the sealed grounds. Fi and Linkle team up and fight against the growing number of tiny imprisoned, and after taking out most of them, as well as the soldiers ordered to control them, Girahim becomes enraged and just charges at them. Linkle lands the final blow and Girahim flees the sealed grounds. For now, at least. He knows where the Gate of Souls is, and neither Fi nor Linkle noticed that it was there, so while Fi returns to Skyloft and Linkle once again marches towards the direction of Hyrule Castle, the Gate of Souls is left unguarded in the Sealed Temple. Girahim realizes this and starts planning the long game, otherwise people might come back to stop the ritual again.
All right.
So as I said, both battles we just talked about took place at the same time right after the Convergence. And with those out of the way, enough time has passed that the forces of Hyrule have planned out a course of action. The army will split into 3 factions, and each faction will work to locate and close the Gate of Souls, which Lana believes will diminish the power that Sia has access to. Once that's done, they choose to hold off on stopping Sia until Link can obtain the power of Evil's Bane, the Master Sword, the one artifact that not even the power of the Triforce can outmatch when the latter is used in the name of evil. That's the plan, and all 3 factions set out towards their assigned location to help divide and conquer, unaware of what era they'll even be stepping into. Link leads a faction to the northwest, Lana's faction heads southwest, and Impa's to the east. It doesn't really matter who we start with in following these 3 armies because again, all are taking place at the same time. So let's just go to the era we haven't seen yet to keep things fresh. We find Impa at the foot of Death Mountain, realizing that her army has wandered into the era that we know caused the original split into 3 different alternate futures, the Era of Time. Although obviously Impa would recognize it more as the era that the Demon King himself was born in. Accompanying Impa is Sheik, whom Impa is not a fan of. From the moment that Sheik joined the Hyrulean army back at the caves, Impa has been suspicious of him, to the point that several times during past battles, Impa gave Sheik the cold shoulder when the two were nearby each other, and now we have Impa telling Sheik to his face that she wished he had gone with literally any other faction. Look, I understand that we know who Sheik is and why he's here, but the point is that Impa doesn't know, and that's part of the story! Impa finally confronts Sheik halfway up the mountain, accusing him of being an imposter, which is actually kinda justified, since Sheik has been claiming this whole time to be a member of the Sheikah tribe, the tribe that Impa is deadass the chieftain of. However, the argument fizzles out when a panicked fairy spots the Hyrulean army and bolts to them for help. We learn from this fairy, who definitely cannot be Navi, that the Goron chief of Death Mountain went berserk after confronting a woman named Zelda. Impa is horrified to hear this news, and after hearing from the fairy that the chief had abducted Princess Ruto from Zora's domain, the two decide to postpone their argument and instead focus on rescuing Ruto from the Gorons. This battle can be rough, especially if you're playing on a new file. The 2 strongholds at the center of the map will endlessly summon boulders to roll down the mountain if the Gorons get a hold of it, and this drinks your home base's HP bar. Things get hectic in a hurry when multiple events start happening at once while having to juggle those keeps to maintain them under your control. Impa begins to fight her way to the chief's room, forcing the Goron leader to reveal himself at last, the mighty hero Darunia, and that image goes way harder than it has any right to. Impa beats back Darunia several times, but every time he falls, he just comes right back again, full health and rocks blazing. I played it split screen the very first time I did this level back in 2014, and the war flashbacks still haunt us, as the Gorons would steal both boulder keeps at the most inopportune times, which would force both me and Wynter to race back over there and steal them back, giving the constantly respawning Darunia all the time he needs to waltz into our base and rock the place himself. Now, you might argue that one of us should have went after Darunia while the other handled getting both boulder bases back, and if your warriors are sufficiently enough level, that might work. But if even one of the boulder keeps fall in the hands of the Gorons, then either way, the boulders start rolling and your base starts crumbling, so if it takes too long to regain the center, your base might be too weak to carry on further anyways. Definitely putting us between a rock and a hard place. Darunia's constant healing begins to really wear down Impa's forces. Deciding that something needs to be done, Sheik forms a plan and marches to one of the boulder keeps to end this cycle of rejuvenation for good. With Impa covering him, he hijacks one of the boulder cannons and rolls a boulder straight into the chieftain's room, crushing his food supply. With the food gone but morale still very high, the Gorons retaliate with bomb chews. Classic. Why are these guys so much more difficult to deal with than Sia's army, barring Volga, who is difficult no matter what battle you're fighting in? After then hijacking the bomb chews and blasting right into the chieftain's chamber, Impa discovers that Pose had been manipulating the entire Goron tribe. She expels the curse and releases Darunia and the rest of the tribe from their spell. A slightly distressed Darunia immediately frees Ruto, while I immediately make my way to the badge shop in this game to improve my warrior's clearly faltering stats. While Impa and Sheik are no doubt curious as to why the Dark Forces would want to capture and restrain Ruto within Death Mountain, it turns out that Ruto knows exactly why it happened. After the events of Ocarina of Time, where peace returned to the Kingdom of Hyrule, the Ancients approached Ruto and requested that she be the one to guard over the sealed tomb that housed a fraction of Ganon's spirit. Understanding how dangerous Ganon is from her own experience, Ruto accepted the responsibility and hid the tomb within the one location throughout the era of time that she knew no intelligent being would ever dare step foot in. The bane of nearly every Ocarina of Time player's existence, the Water Temple. Ruto took the tomb containing a chunk of the most evil being to ever exist in Hyrule and hid it in the fucking Water Temple.
That's the evilest thing I can imagine.
God damn if Ruto didn't attempt to pull a 4D chess move with that one. And the only reason her plan failed is because Sia flipped the entire chessboard over right before Ruto could call checkmate, the petty bitch. Ruto then informs Sheik and Impa that the location of Ganon's tomb and the location of the Gate of Souls are one and the same. So the three warriors join forces with Darunia's Goron tribe and plan a new course of action, to storm the Water Temple. Oh no. Now, we were told that Darunia encountered someone named Zelda and became enchanted not long after. Curious. When we last saw Zelda, she retreated into Hyrule Castle, which was raided by Wizro, and we haven't seen her since. It's very possible that Wizro enchanted her and is now a puppet under Wizro's strings. It happened in Twilight Princess, and it can happen again. But hey, that's just a hypothesis. Oh, wait. If Zelda was under Wizro's control, Sia would have slew her at the next available opportunity.
What is happening right now?
This battle immediately begins with Zelda going, "I am Zelda, listen to the sound of my voice." Guys, her text box icon is completely desaturated. How are you all falling for this? Ruto uses the floodgates to temporarily drain Lake Hylia and grant everyone access to the Water Temple, but both Zelda and the gate are still inaccessible, despite all the monsters. Ruto then reveals something quite interesting to Impa. Do you all remember the Lens of Truth? A Hylian artifact used to locate and reveal all natures of things unviewable to normal eyes? Well, it turns out that, quote, a hero had decided to leave it in the Water Temple. If I were to guess, leaving it in the temple for Ruto before departing back to 7 years in the past to live the life they would have otherwise missed? Before I get too distracted, Ruto was suggesting that Impa use the lens here not only to reveal where she's hiding within the temple, but also to reveal the truth about this Zelda. Ruto dives into the water-filled passageways of the temple to retrieve the Lens of Truth, but is ambushed and isolated from Impa's forces by Zelda and her monster forces. Zelda and her monster forces, how are you people falling for this? With Darunia guarding the main entrance from the outside, Sheik and Impa work together to open the remaining floodgates to free Ruto, with this Zelda further boiling Impa's blood by declaring a hostage and demanding that they surrender. They are able to free Ruto from Zelda's clutches, and after the Zora Princess briefly leaves the battlefield to recover, Sheik and Impa use the Lens of Truth to discover the hidden room, revealing the Gate of Souls, the empty tomb, and Zelda herself. Zelda summons King Dodongo outside the temple to threaten Darunia, which fails as the four warriors all team up to eliminate the beast. Riding this buzz all the way back into the Water Temple, Sheik wields the Lens of Truth and reveals the true identity of the Zelda imposter. It's Wizro. Wow, who didn't see that coming? Sheik steps up to the Twisted Wizard, revealing that he knew from the very beginning that someone was merely pretending to be Zelda. How could he possibly know this? Sheik hands the Lens of Truth over to Impa and drops a major bombshell. He, or should I say she, was Zelda the whole time. Wow, who didn't see that come? Impa. Impa didn't see that coming. That's the point, guys. Obviously, if you've played Ocarina of Time before, then from the very moment Sheik appeared, you were expecting this to happen, because, you know, Sheik being Zelda the whole time was a major plot reveal near the end of the game. But Hyrule Warriors wasn't exactly trying to hide it. We already saw that Sheik was in possession of the Triforce of Wisdom. It doesn't get much more in your face than that. Not to mention that the harp Sheik's been using as a weapon is the same harp that Zelda was playing in the opening cutscene. Sorry if that blue handkerchief might have thrown you off. After apologizing to Impa for lying about who she was up until now, the two step up to the Gate of Souls and close it for good, stopping any more monsters from pouring out of the Water Temple. Alright, that's one gate down. Not counting the one at the Valley of Seers, we now have 2 more gates to go. In case you've only been listening to this video like a podcast and haven't been looking at the screen, I've been displaying very simple notes off to the side about what else has been going down while Impa and Sheik were running around the era of time. Granted, I've been doing that before this point, but like I said before, this is the part of the video where a lot is happening all at once, and I want to clarify one more time that the other 2 factions have been just as busy elsewhere on the map, and we can't forget about Sia and Linkle with their own separate adventures. We need to jump back in time a few battles and see what other shenanigans have been occurring in another era of the stitched-together land of Hyrule. Not long after securing the Palace of Twilight from Zant, Sia felt another surge of power growing from a separate rift, occurring above the sealed grounds high in the clouds. Doing what she did last time and arriving at Skyloft, Sia senses another entity of darkness. This time it's Girahim, attacking the human residents of Skyloft with Fee fighting against him. Also on the battlefield we have the... wait, when did he... I thought that it was... hang on, but I can't... I gotta be real with you guys. When I set out to map out the timeline for Hyrule Warriors, I knew it was going to be difficult. I knew it would be a challenge, and that's why I was so excited to do it. This video was probably the most fun to make literally ever. I was so excited to step out in my dandy trim, pull back the curtains and go, hey everyone, all these years and this game is still fucking amazing. And I stand by that even now, and I will always come back to this game and will love it every time. But not even I can defend just how many plot holes are actually forming now that I'm actually putting together this jigsaw puzzle of a timeline. Up until now I was more than willing to suspend my disbelief, but I'm sorry, I have to ask, how in the legacy of Din, Nehru, and Feore did Girahim manage to spawn the actual imprisoned in between the events of his struggle against Linkle and the battle taking place here in Skyloft? Musou games are popular for their gameplay, not their plots. Doesn't help that the Zelda timeline is notorious for being a confusing mess, but this is basic logic! I have to apologize. It is still bothering me that the imprisoned was successfully summoned. Not even at the Sacred Grounds, but in Skyloft, in a battle that took place not long after a battle specifically involving a botched summoning ritual. Just to try and clear things up, I specifically replayed again every mission involving Girahim that happened before Sia's inevitable fight with Link. There are 4, listed on screen right now. It's a challenge to try and piece together every single battle in Legend Mode using every single piece of information given. However, it is much easier to map out 4 battles based on a single character's patterns and actions. I'm not going to go over Girahim's direct movements here, since we're going over everything anyway as the story progresses. All I'm going to say is that I think I'm correct on this one as far as the order of battles goes. I'm willing to relent if I am indeed wrong here, but I think Girahim's motives are pretty clear for each battle he's in. I acknowledge that this beast is here in Skyloft, but I'm just gonna pretend that it's another failed specimen that's much weaker than the genuine article because it makes just a bit more sense to see the real imprisoned later. Please don't hurt me in the comments. Anyways, back to the fight. If you're wondering why Girahim's even here and not lurking around the sealed grounds, to be honest, I'm not 100% positive on that either. It probably involves perfecting the ritual in some way. Maybe he needs to do something here in Skyloft before even trying to revive Demise again, but I don't know, I haven't played Skyward Sword yet. Under orders, Volga approaches the people of Skyloft and offers them support with Sia's army. This relieves the Sky Forces while pissing off Girahim once again due to this new army joining. And together, Sia works with Fee to bring Girahim down. That is, until the Demon Lord senses the power of Ganon within the sorceress, and steps back from battle. Now obviously Girahim doesn't yet know who Ganon is, but the Demon Lord serves Demise, and even I know about the omen that Demise screamed out before being slain. Sia manages to wrest all of Skyloft from Girahim's forces, but the battle is far from over, as this slippery f*** returns almost as soon as he left to offer up his complete servitude to Sia. Volga sees right through this, but Sia is unfaltered. And... like we didn't see this coming. Girahim summons a completely new wave of monsters to Skyloft, this time with the army loyal to Sia. And while you might expect me to say that the humans of Skyloft are quickly wiped out, surprisingly no. I mean, yeah, they do eventually fall, but damn, do I gotta give these guys credit for putting up a fight. This battle is not easy once Sia betrays Skyloft. A bunch of saboteurs show up across the map, Fee powers up in strength and defense, and Girahim nearly got wiped out near the end when I replayed this fight for this video. It takes a bit of elbow grease, but Sia eventually does beat down Fee and declare Skyloft conquered. The soldiers of Skyloft are still fighting even after this, and Sia's just like, take a hint and learn to quit. From here, we see the members of Sia's faction split off to guard the Gates of Souls from losing their monster supply, as well as to stop the Hyrulean army from getting in the way regardless. I want to argue that Wizro had already brainwashed Darunia by this point, so he decided to return to the era of time to keep things under control at the Water Temple. Sia departs to the era of Twilight to check on Zant and make sure he's still protecting the gate in the Twilight Realm. Volga still sees that the Skyloft soldiers have refused to give up, even after Fi was forced back into the goddess statue to recover. Admiring their courage, the Dragon Knight decides to stay in Skyloft in an attempt to finish the battle once and for all. Rather than return to the sealed grounds, Girahim opts to take charge of the entire army and allow Volga to run wild. I swear, Volga is the Lu Bu of the Kingdom of Hyrule. I want to see these two go all out in battle.
Actually, if one were to research historical Chinese documentation of the Three Kingdoms era and compare them to the power scaling and lore from the Legend of Zelda franchise, the Dragon Knight of Fire would absolutely destroy Lu Bu in one-on-one combat. You're not exactly making this a fair fight.
Are you sure about that? You do realize that I am specifically referring to Dynasty Warriors Lu Bu, right? The army of Skyloft shows no sign of slowing down, a feat that I'm sure impresses Volga to no end, and it looks like refusing to give up has its benefits, because who would finally arrive at the Land of the Clouds but Link and Proxy? Good timing, you two! Any longer to get here, and the soldiers here might have finally met their fiery maker. The soldiers of Skyloft have been preparing a pumpkin soup, to help win the battle?
I ain't gonna let it get to me, I'm just gonna creep down in Pumpkin Hill, I got to find my lost piece.
I really need to play Skyward Sword. What is this? Well, it just so happens to be the favorite meal for a specific guardian of the... I almost said Guardians of the Galaxy. Well, it just so happens to be the favorite meal for a specific guardian of the sky, a sentient sky whale named Levias. Why is the magical sky whale less surprising to me than a gigantic bowl of pumpkin soup? Link moves in to assist in transporting the soup to Levias when he hears a mystical voice reach out to him from under the statue of the goddess of Hylia. Link fights his way through and finds himself standing before the goddess sword. That's right, Fi has managed to recover all of her strength and is ready to jump back into the battle for Skyloft. I have completed my transfer of the soup. The Legend of Zelda, everybody. Levias is more than willing to help out after being offered the soup, and smashes a giant piece of rock in between two parts of the island to help rescue the Skyloft soldiers isolated by Girahim and Volga. Alongside this advantage, Link pushes forward and stops Girahim from destroying the main camp, forcing Girahim to retreat. Ooh, that's rough, buddy. First Linkle, then Sia, and now Link. That's 3 for 3. You, wanna try a new strategy there? Girahim seemingly agrees with me and dips back down to the sealed grounds. Or does he? Volga's supposedly all alone now, and Link has been waiting for a rematch. Volga sees Link, remembers that the latter has the Triforce of Courage, or rather, he did, and goes, you know what? Sounds good. I think I'll actually try, and then proceeds to Lu Bu the f*** up. To those of you who haven't played any other Dynasty Warriors game besides this one, here's an apt comparison. I have no chance of winning, so I'm just gonna bail. Bye! Oh god! Nope, we're out of here, we're out of here! Shit, run! Oh god, that was... Oh, I gotta go find myself some, food. It's to the point where even Levias is like that one guy from my comment section going, dude, take a chill pill. With Proxy's help, Link summons the Great Fairy again, who juices up Levias with enough power to absolutely smack Volga like Chansey with a nurse hat on. Volga is nearly forced onto his knees and flees Skyloft by Link thanks to Levias' blast, meaning that Skyloft is finally back in the hands of the people! That was a Metal Gear Rising reference. I really want to play that game. While Link and Fi exchange information between each other among the peace, a lurking Girahim finally begins his plans. He quietly brainwashes one of the Skyloftian generals into an obedient sleeper agent within the forces, and then finally departs into the sealed grounds to begin the ritual one final time. Fi senses what Girahim is up to, and since she is already aware of the nature of this ritual since, you know, she's Fi, not to mention she's already stopped it once before, she convinces Link with the rest of the Hyrulean forces to move quickly to the sealed grounds below to stop the Demon Lord, unaware that the sleeper agent was already planning something huge. Girahim locks himself in the sealed temple and begins his big plan, waiting for Link to break in from the side where the Demon Lord conveniently placed a gatekeeper at the loneliest end of the temple. You ding-dong. Unfortunately, Link storms into the temple just as he planned, and at that moment, Girahim orders the sleeper soldier to turn and attack his fellow men. He must have been spreading spores on the way to the sealed grounds, because what feels like half of the Hyrulean army suddenly turned traitorous and a chunk of Link and Fi's teammates flee. The pair are given no choice but to retreat from the sealed temple and locate Patient Zero before the rest of their forces become turncoats. This battle isn't hard, but damn if it still doesn't catch you off guard with just how many more Hyrulean soldiers suddenly up and start attacking your bases the longer you take to locate the turncoat leader. I chose to ride Epona for this fight, who literally stomps on your enemies as you move forward, so I didn't really have to stop or make many detours while scouting the bases. It's certainly much easier in Legends and Definitive, where you can divide and conquer commanding both Link and Fi at the same time. The pair finally find the Bad Egg after losing so many of their own allies to betrayal, placing Girahim with the current advantage. Okay, can we finally enter the sealed temple now? No? What more can Girahim possibly have up his... Oh yeah, I forgot that was your goal from the jump. And oh look, he's actually using the Gate of Souls to break him free. See, that's why I was so befuddled when it appeared in Skyloft during the last battle. It made no sense. Gameplay-wise, the Imprisoned sucks to fight. Big shocker. It's not as bad as Manhandla if I had to get personal about it, but the creature gets more and more irritating to take down the less HP it has. Luckily, in the case of this battle, we have the Goosenators to help chunk off its HP a lot faster, so that's good. Eliminating the Imprisoned back under the ground where it belongs is the final straw for Girahim, and the demon flies into a pure rage. He summons a final wave of monsters to kill Link and Fi using the Gate of Souls, but it simply isn't enough. Link finally breaks into the temple, blasts Girahim directly through the Gate of Souls, and by direction of Fi, slashes the gate closed. That's another Gate of Souls sealed shut. Sia's army just got another fourth weaker.
Alright, one more jump back into the timeline, and everyone should be meeting back up in one place. So the last time we saw Midna, she wasn't doing too well. Zant showed up out of nowhere, Sia transformed her into a shape she thought she would never have to deal with again, and her palace and kingdom were ripped away from her by force. Now wandering the land of light with a collection of monsters herself, Midna has been planning a counterattack against the sorceress that cursed her. She engulfs as much of Hyrule Field into Twilight as she can to power herself up for the inevitable fight, which, yeah, we'll get to that in a second, and orders an attack on the army attempting to march through the patches of Twilight, believing the incoming army to be Sia's.
I wasn't completely confident regarding my Twilight Princess knowledge, so I hit two birds with one stone by playing the game, since I needed footage anyway. My initial memories from this game left me with some conflicting sets of information. I knew enough to remember that if anyone that isn't a Twily is pulled into the Twilight, they become spirits. That's like the plot of Twilight Princess. However, in Hyrule Warriors, that definitely doesn't happen. We see an entire squad of Hyrulean soldiers venture into Twilight, and besides being hard to navigate on account of being so dark, these soldiers are doing just fine. So what is going on? Is this a plot hole? Well, I originally did have a longer explanation here, but it kind of broke the flow of things, so I'll just cut to the chase. Nope, it's not a plot hole. The patches of Twilight that we see Midna blanket the area with during Hyrule Warriors are actually behaving naturally, for lack of a better term. I know that sounds weird given the events of Twilight Princess, but under normal circumstances, Twilight isn't supposed to be able to melt bodies into spirits. Otherwise, given the circumstances, you'd think that Link would be stuck as a wolf for the entirety of his time exploring the palace in the Twilight realm. Long story short, the Twilight that Zant was covering Hyrule with during his conquest was tainted with Ganondorf's dark powers, and was a lot more dangerous than how Twilight is normally supposed to be. Now, like I said, I'd go into more detail, but this video is long enough as it is, so I'll just point you towards Zeltic, who did an amazing job talking about the entirety of this subject in this video, link in the description, along with the other videos I referenced. Now, I'm not going to pretend that my explanation covers everything, because it doesn't. There are a few plot contrivances that do pop up regarding the rules of Twilight, and if I notice them, then I'm sure that others probably will as well, but I don't think they matter all too much in terms of the story. Let's be honest here, if Koei Tecmo doesn't bend the rules of Twilight, or if they don't attempt to explain away these contrivances with loopholes, then we would have lost so much potential for this character crossover adventure, and choosing to ignore characters and stages from Twilight Princess would have been such a waste! To those of you that are still a bit iffy on non-Twily exploring patches of Twilight without corroding away, I do understand your consistent concerns. But I have a secondary explanation for you. one that is theoretically plausible. Unlike with the unexpected arrival of the imprisoned, which I have no explanation for, I think I might be able to explain this issue with a very easy potential explanation. Sia can use intense magic to protect her forces from the body-melting power of Twilight. Boom! Crisis averted! Also, were you all able to tell that I moved my voiceover location? Sorry for sounding different, but I had to move rooms again during this video's production. I just can't catch a break! Anyways, if Sia can create such a powerful protection magic, then I'm sure Lana can as well. And speaking of, Lana and her faction have just arrived and are searching for the Gate of Souls. But wait, this isn't Sia's army. Oh dear. Midna launches her attack and orders her monsters into battle. Kakariko village is caught in the crossfire, and Lana drops everything to rush into the village when she hears a scream for help. A cry for help? A damsel in distress? Who could it be? Who needs our help in this time of need?
Agatha? The Bug Princess? I mean, I ain't no hater, but really? Agatha?
Yes, Mr. Peanut Butter Gamer, sir. I know. I'm baffled too. It was a meme when she was first revealed, it was a meme throughout this game's life cycle, and damn it, I'm still memeing on it now. Who decided that out of all the characters that appeared in Twilight Princess, that Agatha the Bug Princess should be chosen as a playable character? I'm not against it, but it's really funny that Agatha made it through the gate into Hyrule Warriors when Groose from Skyward Sword was right there. Oh god, they're gonna make her imperative to the plot. As thanks for saving her, Agatha gives Lana a magic goddess butterfly that can literally guide Lana and the Hyrulean forces through the Twilight and straight to the location of the Gate of Souls. Lana and Agatha attempt to follow the butterfly, but the poor creature is captured by Midna not long after, assuming it to be spreading some kind of poison magic? Okay. Agatha clears up the confusion by explaining to Midna that the goddess butterfly is not poisonous and that it can actually guide people to where they want to go. Agatha, why are you telling her all that? Upon hearing this, Midna seizes the opportunity and asks the butterfly to take her to where Sia is hiding. And it does. And Midna leaves. And you're a butthead, Agatha. Midna is convinced that Lana is part of Sia's army, so as she departs, the Twilight Princess orders an attack on the Hyrulean forces. Using the butterfly, she reveals where Sia is hiding and threatens violence against the Dark Sorceress. Lana pursues Midna and does manage to catch up just as the latter confronts Sia. Sia simply laughs, calls Midna short, and fucking leaves. Priceless. With Midna and Lana now alone, this only further convinces Midna that Lana is a part of Sia's army and declares war on Lana, who was only trying to get the bug back. During the skirmish, Midna reveals that not only are the patches of Twilight her doing, but the more Twilight covering the land around her, the stronger she becomes, and I do mean that literally. At this point in the battle, Midna is basically invincible, and Lana quickly deduces that getting rid of the Twilight will weaken her. Lana orders Agatha to find shelter in Kakariko village as she backs off from Midna's army to dispel the Twilight, a feat that Midna wasn't expecting. Agatha ignores this order and runs off to find Midna. All of this chaos over a butterfly. Oh my god. The Legend of Zelda, everybody! Lana dispels all of the Twilight, weakening Midna greatly. Believing she has lost for good, Midna submits defeat, only for Lana to explain everything. With the misunderstanding now cleared and a common goal now established, Midna agrees to a ceasefire and joins the forces of Hyrule with Lana. And Agatha is here too, I guess. But you don't unlock Agatha for real during the story mode, so... Moving on, there's a separate conflict not really related to what's going on with Lana that I do want to cover. Rather than having this side fight just slapped in at the end before everyone meets up, I've decided to talk about it first before this next battle in the era of Twilight. But in terms of where we are in the timeline, just know that the fight I'm about to talk about next and the next skirmish involving Lana and Midna are more or less taking place at the same time. Now then, time to take that detour. There's somewhere, or someone else, that requires our attention. Having been dispelled from Skyloft by Link and Fee, Volga became thirsty for an even more difficult battle, preferably one where a giant white Wailord would not use Thunderbolt on him mid-fight. Hearing that Wizrow had failed to protect the Gate of Souls within the era of time, Volga left Skyloft to Girahim and made his way to confront these legendary warriors who bested the Twisted Wizard. Impa and Zelda had already left the Water Temple in victory, with Ruto and Darunia opting to stay behind in case something should happen, and lo and behold, here comes Volga and Linkle. Wait, what? Pull up that map again. How did Linkle manage to move from the northwest side of Hyrule to the southeast side and not bump into Hyrule Castle? Oh my god, did this motherfucker just rumline right past her intended destination? You know I've hit a critical point in the video where I start busting out navigational terms. Holy mother. Volga sets up a base of operations on the Zora throne room, not gonna ask how I pulled that one off, and challenges the Sages of Time to a battle of the eras. Everyone, including Ruto and Linkle, takes shelter within the Water Temple to avoid the monsters, which, literally the last place ever where I would want to seek refuge, but okay. With everyone settled inside, Darunia grabs his hammer and marches to Volga. Alone. Ruto recognizes immediately that the Goron chieftain is walking into a slaughter, but is horrified to discover that he accidentally broke the door when he left, trapping everyone inside. Now, don't get confused by my wording. Everyone inside the temple is far from being in any real danger. The reason why this is a huge problem is because Darunia is fighting out there all by himself. No one else is with him, which means that this battle becomes a race against time as Linkle and Ruto work to fix the temple doors while Darunia gets pummeled to near death. Look at this map. You have to work fast before the big guy can be slain, and his HP absolutely drains depending on the difficulty and level of your warrior. Luckily, Linkle is able to bust through and reach Darunia before he dies. Just barely in my case. So Darunia is safe. Probably has a head injury based on Ruto and Linkle's dialogue, but I think the bigger problem now surfacing is that Volga's forces just broke both doors leading into the temple, including the secret door over here that no one really talks about. So the doors are busted again, except this time they're now open and a bunch of Aerolfo start marching in. Bummer, dude. Luckily, Ruto has plenty of bite to back up her bark, so I'm more worried about Linkle and Darunia over there. Volga tests Darunia's strength by sending wave after wave at the Goron. With Linkle backing him up, he beats his way to the Zora throne room, impressing Volga. He swings open the throne room doors and the two start their epic fight. Meanwhile, there's me off in the corner, just destroying every living thing currently existing in the room, and then Volga? Have I mentioned that I love this game? Okay, now that Volga is being forced to retreat, back to Lana and Midna's situation. Where were we? With their battle coming to a truce, Lana and Midna follow the goddess butterfly to the Palace of Twilight, which, by the way, duh, the Gate of Souls is here, Midna, you idiot. When Lana said that she's looking for what she called the Gate of Souls, did you not bother to tell her that you saw a strange glowing gate-like phenomenon in your own palace? You could have saved her plenty of valuable time by saying, "F the fly, we need to go here," and instead you just let this bug take you to where you were going anyway. Seriously, this is not a plot hole, this is just you being a dunderhead. It's even funnier in my case because I'm playing as Midna, meaning that Lana is the leader of this operation. If you went into this battle as Lana, Midna takes charge, and no way am I letting you run this ship after letting that one fly by, wolf girl. Either way, Zant is still here protecting the Gate of Souls. It seems that he's still being pushed around by Sia. After separating Midna and Agatha from Lana, Zant summons Argarok to start spewing fire at their base. The Twilight Dragon is too high for anyone to reach, forcing Lana to step away from the main base to set up a magic circle to help pull him down. We fought Argarok before, but I didn't delve into it the first time because Zant didn't really take advantage of Argarok's usefulness then like he does now. I guess he learned from his loss against Sia. I'll explain the magic circle here for reasons we will see very quickly because, frankly,
I've been waiting for this.
the magic circles that Lana has been using involve concocting ethereal chains that launch towards Argarok in an attempt to pull him down to Muso range. Unfortunately, Lana soon realizes that while the magic circles are certainly distracting the dragon, it's not enough to keep it out of the sky. He gets chained up for a few seconds but breaks free before the chains can retract. Zant continues his strategy to isolate the warriors between each other as Argarok continues to ravage the main base from the sky. By this point, Lana, Agatha, and Midna are spread so thin between each other on the battlefield that you actually have to take advantage of the swap warriors function to not lose every single keep you work to get. Yes, that includes playing as Agatha. The Great Fairy soon steps in, seeing the situation, and decides to get creative. Argarok dodges the chain and goes, "Ha! You missed! You missed, you stupid fair! Oh!" I should probably clarify that this isn't the actual moon from Majora's Mask. It's just an illusion given physical mass thanks to the magic of the fairies. But goddamn if Argarok getting his shit wrecked like this isn't an amazing visual. Argarok falls to the ground, in range for the Hyrulean forces to start smacking it around. Seeing this, Zant soon steps out and begins his own charge. Argarok's involvement makes this particular battle, in my humble opinion, one of the hardest fights in the entire story mode. Obviously, the challenge in legend mode goes away after grinding through every adventure mode map and coming back for goodie hunting, but the flashbacks for this level during my first ever playthrough still live rent-free in my head as a Hyrule Warriors fanboy. Believe me when I say that I'm making the battle look much easier since I'm playing as a high-leveled Midna on hard mode and not hero mode. Once Zant and Arkarok start attacking at the same time, things get brutal quick. Breaking away from Legend mode for a moment, I actually wanted to recreate this battle's difficulty to really pinpoint why I remember this battle being so tough. So I scooped up a different warrior on hero mode, gave him a decent weapon at best, and jumped into free mode. On the plus side, it gives me a chance to play with a character that doesn't actually appear in the story mode. Welcome to the guest spotlight, Ravio. So, it all boils down to two factors: how much longer your base can hold up on its own, and how much damage your warrior can actually dish out. In the case of the latter, I realize that hitting really hard seems like a given, but most of the time, battles can still be won so long as your allies and/or your base isn't being targeted. In this case, it's always being targeted. Any moment that you're not actively inside the base, that health bar is gonna plummet. Setting up magic circles, rescuing Agatha, dealing with Aerophos, it all accumulates. By the time Zant and Arkarok team up, if your warrior is not prepared, then you will simply not have enough time to beat those two before the main base falls. That's why this fight is hard as balls. And I love it. This shit gives me a dopamine rush. I recommend asking for help on this one with some good old couch multiplayer if you find yourself having too much trouble. Also, I had to replay this battle with Ravio twice because my Agatha stand-in fell in battle before I could even pull Arkarok down to beat it up. Have I ever mentioned how absolutely abhorrent I am at video games, even the ones I love to play?
How about you get some rings first? Or that. That's not gonna last that long, but okay, sure.
I can manage! Never mind.
Give me that controller!
Anyways, back to the story. Lana lands the final blow on both Zant and Arkarok and makes her way with Midna to the Gate of Souls within the palace. I'm unsure what exactly happens to Zant since we don't see any visuals, but I'm going to assume he vanishes after his defeat since he should already be dead. We see him later, so it's not a permanent wipe. Upon closing the gate, Sia confronts Lana at the tomb, but the conversation is uprooted by a furious Midna yelling at Lana that Sia was the one who transformed her into an imp. See? Proof Zant had nothing to do with Midna's curse this time. Sia confirms Midna's accusation and mocks her once again. This sends Midna's rage to the boiling point, and she attacks Sia using the fused shadow. That's the weird helmet-looking thing on her head. Yep, the hair is hers, but that weird mask, helmet? That can actually come off. I was caught quite off guard when I saw this happen for myself. Sia herself is unharmed, but her plague mask is knocked off and breaks, finally revealing her face in the main story. Midna is surprised to see that Lana and Sia look very similar, and Lana explains to Midna what I explained to you all, just worded a bit differently. I'm not going to argue that Lana's explanation is wrong per se, but I hope you can all forgive me if I refuse to believe that Lana and Sia are equal halves like the former is implying. Lana definitely grows in character to become Sia's equal in every way by the time this game's story ends, but based on how the game explained itself earlier, I was always under the impression that Sia was the Sorceress of Power and only became corrupted by Ganon due to having her abilities to cast light magic ripped away from her. Let me check the Zelda wiki to see what their take on this is. His words managed to persuade her, ultimately corrupting Sia as her light was pushed away. Okay, the wiki is essentially backing up what I said. I worded things a touch differently to make more sense of things, but I don't think that I have to re-edit my script. This is not a Caroline Justine situation as far as I'm concerned. This is more of a Aegis Metis situation. But rather than go off into this tangent any further, would you look at that? All three gates that spawned inside the eras that were dragged into the current era have been closed off. The only Gate of Souls left standing and pouring out monsters is the one in the Valley of Seers. Now it's time for the next step. The game calls this part the Epilogue, which, no. We are only slightly past the halfway point. The good news is, from here on out, the story should be a lot easier to follow, as everything from here is pretty linear in terms of what happens when and next. There's still a lot more to cover, but it's not going to be a jumbled, convoluted mess. At least, I don't think it will be. I'm kidding, I know it won't be. With everyone's roles fulfilled and with all the cloned Gates of Souls now gone, the forces of Hyrule reunite outside the Valley of Seers to discuss their next move. Zelda congratulates Link for his efforts thus far, acknowledging him as the legendary hero of Hyrule ever since they first witnessed each other at the training grounds. This sparks sadness in Lana, who is revealed to also have feelings for Link, which makes sense, since Sia did from the start. Midna stops Lana from walking away and convinces her to reveal the truth. Lana agrees without issue, again going over what I did about her being yoinked from Sia and manifesting as a being created from intense light magic. The truth is now laid bare, and Lana finally reveals to Zelda, Link, and the rest of the Hyrulean army exactly who was responsible for corrupting Sia and convincing her to conquer Hyrule. This is nothing that we don't already know, and I'm sure that even if you have never played this game before, you could have still guessed who the true villain in all of this was. But just like I argued when it came to Sheik and Zelda, what's important here isn't that we as the audience know who it was. What's important here is that the Hyrulean army didn't know who it was. I'm sure everyone had the same suspicions, especially Midna and Ruto, but Lana knew all along, and now she finally decides to spill the beans. Having returned to the Valley of Seers herself after losing control over all three eras, the voice in Sia's head finally decides that she has outlived her usefulness. The three fragments of the evil soul rip free from Sia's body and fuse together before the sorceress, revealing to Sia who had been influencing her this whole time. Now, I had been doing a pretty good job of using his other appearances for this video when talking about him, since we already know who this evil soul is. But now, I can use this opportunity to finally reveal what the Demon King looks like in Hyrule Warriors. This is Ganondorf. 3 fragments out of 4 is more than enough for Ganondorf to recreate his body, and we already have gone into plenty of details on how much power he possesses with just 1 fragment alone. But God forbid he is still not at full power. Nonetheless, he immediately tries to kill Sia and steal the completed Triforce from her. But plot twist, Ganondorf seems to have forgotten after all of this that Sia is a demigod, and while Ganondorf is no doubt stronger in power than her overall, his underestimation of her backfires, as Sia emails the Triforce of Courage and Wisdom back to Link and Zelda respectively, and then proceeds to drop Ganondorf into the Null Zone from Sonic Forces. The Sorceress is now officially free from any and all control from Ganondorf, but the immense spiritual calamity inside of her has already caused too much damage for, full spiritual recovery, I guess could be a good way to put it. Sia vows to steal back the Triforce herself, finish her conquest of Hyrule, and most importantly, make love even when I'm dead. The power of love is a force that not even the Master Sword can cut through. Wait a minute. Master Sword? Oh yeah! The forces of Hyrule, as well as the heroes from all 4 eras, set up camp outside the Temple of the Sacred Sword in preparation to retrieve, well, the Sacred Sword. Impa is hesitant for anyone to draw the sword from its pedestal, knowing that a great evil is sealed underneath. But Lana assures her that withdrawing the sword isn't enough to release the spirit, and the Master Sword is imperative to stop Sia. Zelda, along with everyone else, confides in Link's abilities, and everyone makes their way to the temple. Well, the doors to the temple are sealed shut, and ghost soldiers start popping up everywhere looking for a fight. Guess we have no choice but to do this the old-fashioned Dynasty Warriors way. Okay, so I tried cracking my knuckles to try and raise the tension, and it didn't work. Goddamn pause. So this battle's kinda cool. There are 3 sacred statues within the area that represent many different aspects of Hyrule's natural elements. Multiple forms of magic, different types of realms, etc. And each statue must be awakened in order to open the doors to the temple. What's interesting is that the statues are not completely circumstantial. It's almost as if the statues can change their roles to test if the potential wielder of the Master Sword has what it takes in order to access its true power, which, honestly, is pretty spot on given the circumstances. Well, that, or the statues just so happen to require the magic that the Hyrulean forces happen to have within their army. Lucky. I think I'll just go with my first theory. That's more fun. Depending on who you chose to play as for this fight, each of the 3 statues can potentially be awakened by a different warrior. The statue of Wave and Flame is usually awakened by Darunia, but if you're actually playing as him, Ruto awakens the statue instead. The statue of Servitude is defaulted for Impa to awaken it, but if you're playing as Impa, then Fi serves as the activator. Okay, so this 3rd statue is the reason why I'm arguing that these sealed structures most likely change their activation requirements for every situation. Because in the case of the statue of Twilight, take a wild guess who has to awaken the stupid rock if you're playing as Midna. Yeah, I'm not even gonna make a joke. How does Agatha, the bug princess, possess the power to awaken that? If you had instead called this thing the Statue of Nature, I probably would have been able to swallow that a bit easier, as both insects and Twilight are natural forces in the lore of Hyrule. But no, it's specifically the Statue of Twilight. Okay, I'm getting off track again. I decided to play as Impa for this video since having a representative from all three eras to awaken the statues just seemed fitting. Not sure why Fi isn't the default pick to awaken the rock, but who am I to judge Nintendo or Koei? Right, so I forgot about something as I was writing the script for this part of the video, but the situation with Impa unlocking the statues still thematically works for representing each era. This is because Impa in Hyrule Warriors is not only based on the Skyward Sword variant of Impa, but also this character is considered as a Skyward Sword representative anyway. This is evident if you look at the versus Skyward skill you can attach to weapons, where the strength of the weapon is increased if you're attacking Fi, Girahim, and Impa. So yeah, Impa awakening the statue makes more sense than I gave credit for. Agatha, however, is still a huge stretch. Since the ghost soldiers destined to protect the Master Sword from the bad guys are halting the good guys from activating the sealed statues, Zelda surmises that they must have fallen under some sort of hex. The Hyrulean forces weed out the culprit, who was pretending to be Lana just as the statues finally awaken and the temple doors swing open. This breaks the ghosts from their spell and they all welcome Link into the Temple of the Sacred Sword. Ladies and gentlemen, we now arrive 44 fucking pages in at the moment you've all been waiting for. Link slowly and gently pulls the Master Sword out from its pedestal and examines it, the sword gently glowing in a pale yellow light. While seemingly distracted by the aura of the Master Sword, Wizro manages to sneak up on Link and attempts to kill him with an intense blast. Before the hit can land, Link effortlessly brushes the blast aside, showing the full power of the Master Sword in one swift and single move. Apparently Wizwo has been trying to pull out the Master Sword for himself this whole time while we were out fighting ghosts, because he orders Link to hand it over to him or be killed. Honestly, I wish Link had given him the sword, because what would have happened? Would Wizro have just dissolved with it in his hand right then and there? It's the Master Sword, one of the most famous and heroic swords in all of media. I know the word literally has been used incorrectly these past few years, but what I'm about to say next is not hyperbole. The Master Sword literally cannot be used by evil hands. It straight up will not work. Wizro is forced to flee, having sustained way more damage than he normally would have thanks to the power of the Master Sword. He reveals where Sia is setting up a new base of operations and limps away, or whatever the levitating equivalent of limping away actually is. Now that we have the Master Sword, all that's left is to strike down Sia once and for all. The army of Hyrule begins their march towards a new location for us, the Temple of Souls. Sia has been waiting for this moment, the real moment where she can witness Link fighting with the legendary sword of evil's bane. She doesn't even care that she's on the receiving end. Link was her target the whole time, and she's waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But I'm sure things will be fine. It's not like Link is throwing himself at the enemy with his guard down. Proxy, what the hell?
I put the new 4Gs on the G. I tap into the bloody bottoms is underneath.
Guys, I know that the Master Sword is the most broken weapon in the game. Okay, third most powerful behind these two, but you might want to tone it down a bit. There's confidence, then there's cockiness. Sia's chance finally comes. Taking advantage of the pride and arrogance forming in his soul, Sia manages to summon a powerful dark doppelganger of Link. The two Links clash, but Link can't land a decisive blow on the Shadow, and even when he does, more evil clones spawn in. This is on you, dude. Master Sword grows weaker and weaker the more darkness one exhibits. Right now, it's just a sword that hits slightly harder than the sword you were using earlier. While all of this is going on, Zelda begins to feel a second, more terrifying presence than Sia approaching them on this battlefield. Surprise! It's Ganondorf! Clearly he was able to escape the Null Zone from Sonic Forces, because of course he did. It's the Null Zone from Sonic Forces. Every time a Dark Link is dispatched, two new Links swell up from the fallen Shadow. And remember, these guys are lore-wise just as powerful as Link, so everyone's in a bit of hot water right now. Sia finally traps Link in to fend off against multiple Dark Links at once. Not gonna lie, things look pretty dire.
Is this the end for Link?
Ha! The power of friendship, the ultimate power in every universe. Stepping away from the cheesiness for a second, this is where the story starts to take a turn. For Sia, and not because she's up against the power of friendship. You see, throughout this whole battle, Sia has been pulling the darkness out of Link, quite literally, again using that word, to fuel her Dark Link army. That's why they were literally unbeatable. That's not funny! But when Link finally accepted the strength of both himself and his teammates, the Dark Links could no longer hold form. So, Sia only has one Gate of Souls open left, the genuine one, that can only summon so many monsters compared to when there were 4 gates endlessly pouring them all out like water over a waterfall. And now these monsters are getting destroyed by the Hyrule forces almost as soon as they are summoned. To get around this, Sia used the darkness in Link to summon very strong soldiers, which almost worked. But now she's running out of options. What's a lusty, corrupted sorceress to do now? Well, Sia concludes that there's only one source of darkness left for her to draw power from: herself. This cannot end well. Ignoring Lana's pleas, Sia begins using her own soul to replace the defeated monsters that came from the gate. But even they are dispatched by the Hyrulean army. The tide of this war is beginning to turn. For now. Sia flees the battlefield after this, causing Link and the rest of the army to give chase after her. Of course, they are halted immediately by Ganondorf, who is after the 2 pieces of the Triforce from Link and Zelda. He fails, obviously, as he is only 3/4 complete and is dealing with the Master Sword, so everyone ultimately escapes. Ganondorf has now officially joined the war for real, and he is determined to collect the Triforce pieces for himself. He chooses to leave Link and Zelda be for now, as his current strength can't yet compete with them, and instead decides to target Sia for perhaps better odds. Sia's nearing her breaking point, which means that things are about to get chaotic. Again. So chaotic, in fact, that we now have 2 battles taking place at the same time again! Ganondorf's assault on Sia at the Valley of Seers, and something weird happening in a rather unexpected location of the map. Again. The forces of Hyrule are at a point where they can prepare for the final battle at a reasonable pace. Zelda senses, well, that something weird that I mentioned a few seconds ago, and leaves to investigate it. Alone.
What, are you retarded?
Yeah, fucking bearer of the Triforce of Wisdom over here. Go ahead, Zelda, check out some unknown mysterious presence elsewhere in Hyrule by your lonesome. I'm sure that plan won't backfire at all. The rest of the army hear that the strange phenomenon Zelda sensed is originating from the palace in the Twilight Realm. And upon hearing that, Midna blasts away from the army in an attempt to catch up with Zelda. Meanwhile, Lana begins to fear that Sia might fall permanently in the upcoming battle, a fate that fills the Light Sorceress with despair. She confides with Link and departs to the Valley of Seers to try and settle things peacefully with Sia to prevent her downfall. Okay, so between the 2 skirmishes, let's start with Sia since we already have an idea on what's going to happen there, and we'll catch up with Midna afterwards. Ganondorf has arrived at the Valley of Seers, and since Wizrow is still riling from his stint with the Master Sword, it's up to Sia and Volga to push him back. Sia continues to tap into her own soul to power up her forces against Ganondorf, which seems to be helping, but it's also quite apparent that pulling from her own magic soul is actually draining her sanity. Oh, good. This fight starts with 2 Goma coming right for the 2 front forts, and once you defeat one of them, Ganondorf summons Manhandla. 3 giant bosses, one after the other, and this is not even the only time that Legend Mode does this. Luckily, by the time you actually unlock this fight, you should be at a point where they can go down after breaking their gauge at least once, but I still hate Manhandla. So there! Sia orders Wizrow to help despite his weakened state, and the Twisted Wizard begrudgingly starts to move towards the Twisted Tree. It is here where we can see that the loyalty spell has worn off on both Volga and Wizrow. I mean, look at this dialogue. The snake. After defeating all 3 of the stupid giant bosses, Wizrow finally turns traitor and summons as many Poes as he can for Ganondorf's forces. Sia is outraged at first until she realizes that Wizrow wasted all of the remaining energy he had left summoning monsters. She clears them all out rather effortlessly and begins marching straight to him. Man, even as an unhinged nutcase, Sia is still a force to be reckoned with. Good thing Wizrow sided with the stronger army, right? Right? Well, it was nice knowing you, Wizrow, you freak of nature. Volga also swears off his loyalty to Sia, but opts to continue fighting on her side anyway since Ganondorf is a far more enticing opponent. He challenges Ganondorf to a Final Destination no items 3-stock unlimited time match right at Ganondorf's front door. The Demon King is amused, but forces Volga out of his main camp by utilizing a magic barrier. Hey, now that's kinda neat! Magic barriers appear super often in the adventure mode, but in legend mode it only happens once. So here's the thing, Ganondorf creating an elemental barrier was a clever move to make in terms of the story, though I suspect that this was unintentional. In adventure mode, you need to find a fairy of the correct element to help dispel magical barriers, but what did Sia do at the very start of her conquest? Yup, attempt fairy genocide. Call me a rather foolish furphy if you must, but I have just a distinct feeling that even the Darkness Elemental Fairies are not exactly willing to lend Sia a hand here to take down Ganondorf's main camp, leaving Sia just a bit stuck. Volga is forced to retreat back to the peak of the ruins just as a psychotic Sia finally gives Wizrow the absolute beatdown he deserves before sealing him back into the cursed ring. We are unable to determine if Sia destroyed the ring after sealing Wizrow inside of it, but we never see him again in the story after this point, so I like to think that she did. So, Wizrow is gone for good, Volga's fighting monsters by his own rules, and Ganondorf has launched an all-out assault on the ruins to corner Sia, who by now is just a mental mess. She channels more of her soul to summon Dark Links to protect her, further draining her cognitive abilities. Luckily, Lana has arrived at the Valley of Seers just in time, as I mentioned before, and quickly reacts to the situation. She and Sia team up to dispel the barrier, which isn't that hard of a mission, but the longer it takes you to get over there, the stronger Ganondorf becomes by the time you do reach him. So, hurry it up. Using the power of light, which, believe me, Lana has an abundance of, the barrier of darkness shatters and the two swoop in to kill Ganondorf. Except they don't kill him because he's Ganondorf, but they do cause enough damage to force him to retreat from the valley. Again, 3/4 complete. Now that the dust has finally settled, Lana is overjoyed that Sia is still alive at this point and attempts to make peace with her. Sia responds by screaming at her to leave. Very classy. But she's obviously past the point of no return, so Lana is forced to return to the Hyrulean forces, terrified of Sia's fate. Alright, I said that we would get back to Midna's pursuit, so let's get back to Midna's pursuit. Strap in for this one. On her way to the Palace of Twilight, Midna bumps into Linkle, who found a black crystal. Oh, that's the crystal Midna used in Twilight Princess. But how did Linkle find it? Unfortunately, this is another instance of the game kinda sorta skipping the cause and leaving us with just the effect to deal with, so forgive me if I have to get a bit creative here once again. Midna can see that the crystal is overflowing with the power of Twilight, and as soon as Linkle hands the crystal over to her, the power from the crystal seemingly overrides the curse Sia placed on Midna. She's now back to her true form. Now, of course, Midna is smarter than what people give her credit for, so while she probably would have been relieved to be back to normal, she immediately starts connecting the dots and goes, "Oh shit. Something wild must be going on in my palace if weird Twilight crystals such as this one are just appearing all over this foreign Hyrule. And this Hyrule Zelda is already there!" So Midna recruits Linkle, and the two continue to make a break for it towards the Twilight Palace. The scene displayed before them is just what Midna feared. Zelda is locked in the chamber where the Tomb of the Soul was placed and is completely isolated by what looks like forces made entirely of shadow. Okay, so I played through this game's story multiple times to nab all the collectibles, as you do, and Linkle's story, while fun, is the part with the least amount of information available. In a game where the gameplay has a bit more of a focus than the story, Linkle's tale unfortunately leaves the player in the dark as to what the heck is happening, especially in this battle specifically. So I'm gonna try and explain it as best as I can with what little information we have to go with. Zelda is locked in the tomb's chamber with a shadowy doppelganger of Midna, and a similar entity shaped like Zant is blocking the door on the outside. Among the area of the palace, there are two sources of twilight that are expanding outward and swallowing all of Hyrule, albeit slowly. One is the crystal that Midna has, and the other is inside the tomb's chamber, I guess? Midna, Linkle, and a few troops that tagged along rush inside the palace to break Zelda free, only to realize that the place is absolutely swamped with shadows hostile even to the real Midna. Fighting their way to the tomb's chamber, Linkle devastates Zant's mysterious double as well as the shadows controlled by it like the absolute unit that she is, while Midna physically breaks down the tomb's door. The two manage to reach Zelda before she can succumb to the darkness of Twilight. Linkle's compass does the vague, weird, glowy thing, and they all proceed to eradicate the dark version of Midna. What the hell did Linkle say that compelled you to respond with that, Midna? Did you get all that? Good, because that's about all I have in terms of a description. I played this mission like 3 times in a row, and I'm still very confused as to, well, just about everything in terms of this battle. Who or what was this ominous presence that Zelda sensed? Was it actually the shadowy Midna? Okay, but who or what is she? Is this shadowy Midna the source of the expanding corruption, or is it another Twilight Crystal? As much as I hate to say it, this battle is very contrived, and I honestly think the only reason they they added it is to let the player run loose as Midna's true form, which, don't get me wrong, I like that they gave her something to chew on within the story, but this fight just kinda happens. Rescuing Zelda from a malicious entity is hunky-dory, and yes, without Zelda, the forces of Hyrule cannot hope to defeat Sia or Ganondorf. But neither this whatever it is, nor the crystals of Twilight are ever explained or revealed. Not here, not later, not ever. It happens, we stop it, and then we move on. I'm sorry it's come to this. So, despite Dark Double Midna's defeat and assumed evaporation, this ominous Twilight continues to spread. As a last resort, Midna shatters the Twilight Crystal that Linkle gave her, and the energy radiating from within the crystal is released. If you haven't played Twilight Princess yet, you might be a bit confused, but this crystal is pretty much a solidified form of intense Twilight magic. Darker magic that Midna's clan doesn't specialize in. I'm not gonna go too deep into Twilight Princess here, but just trust me on this one. If busted open, this thing can absolutely unleash enough energy to override other forms of Twilight magic. How Linkle managed to find this thing is beyond me, because following the story of Twilight Princess, only one crystal exists. We see its formation in the story, and we know what magic was solidified to create this particular crystal. Also, based on how Twilight Princess ended, Midna should still have had this thing on her, or at the very least possibly had it stored somewhere in her palace. Is this a completely different crystal that someone created? Did someone get a hold of the one that she already had? I don't know. That was a guess. Midna shatters the crystal and the override on Sia's hex is reversed, shrinking Midna back to her cursed form. Good news is that there was more than enough black Twilight magic to dispel the uncontrollable Twilight magic. Sure, fine, whatever, I'm just not gonna question it. With the threat of the ominous Twilight gone, unsolved but no longer an issue, Linkle continues her journey to Hyrule Castle. Wait, what? Where are you going? You just rescued the Princess of Hyrule Castle! She's right here! So you're telling me that Linkle is still making her way to Hyrule Castle after all of this while Zelda and Midna return to the... Did Linkle just not realize who she was rescuing? Ugh, I need a glass of water. Now that we have Zelda, Lana, Midna, and everyone else all back together at the main camp, barring one, it's time to finally bring Sia's reign of terror to an end. Speaking of, Sia's still fueling her forces with her own life force. She's down one general, and an even stronger threat is just watching from the shadows, waiting for her to die so he can steal the Triforce from her. Oh yeah, and Link unlocked the true power of the Master Sword. I think I know who I should be placing my bets on. Or do I? Sia makes the first move and throws her forces before the Hyrulean army can even reach the valley. And by the time they all stand before the valley's pyramid, everyone's positions have gotten scrambled up. You might be wondering how Sia was able to get the jump on her heroes so easily when her last battle against Ganondorf made it look like she was on the brink. Well, shockingly enough, I can explain that. Regarding the battle that took place in the valley the last time we were here, about the spot where Ganondorf set up his camp, do you remember what it looked like? Take a look at the scene where Volga challenges Ganondorf. Do you see it? Yep, there's a Triforce symbol on the wall. Ganondorf had taken the offensive at a sacred sanctum and was using the sanctum's power to amplify his dark strength. After the battle, it's not unreasonable to assume that Sia investigated the sanctums of the Valley of Seers and used them to amplify her own magic, which probably boosted her morale quite a bit.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Zelda and Lana immediately recognize that Sia is abusing the sanctums and move their forces to oust her from both of them. Link and Fi move west to capture the first sanctum, while Zelda, Impa, and Darunia head east to overpower the second. Alright, both sanctums captured and nothing changed. What gives? Well, if you're a bit of an eagle-eyed viewer and not just listening to me podcast style, you might have noticed that neither of these sanctums that we stole back was the one that Ganondorf used against Sia. Lana realizes this and encourages the remaining forces to move south, which makes sense that she would know where it is. She was the one who broke the barrier down and stole the sanctum back the last time we were here. Also, if you actually are listening to me audio only, thank you for not letting yourself be distracted on the road. Have a safe rest of your drive. Anyways, Lana marches down to the southernmost point of the valley and cuts Sia off from its power. With all three of the sanctums ripped from her grasp, Sia loses her mind. I mean, just look at this cutscene. Any trace of heart or good that might have still been in there is gone now. That face is all I need to see. But I might have jumped ahead just a few seconds too far. The reason she's giving the face of is because she just used another chunk of her soul to create even more copies of the Gate of Souls and scattered them around the valley. How much soul energy does she even have left? Is it like Voldemort rules, where she's literally carving out halves of her soul?
Shut up! Shut up!
Or is it more like Warriors Orochi 4, where if she keeps her head down, her soul will eventually regenerate like Zeus's did? Hey man, I'm just trying to fill holes that aren't really supposed to be filled. I'm having a great time regardless. Lana sees the new copy of the gate open right before her and realizes that it's all too late. Sia has carved too much from her soul. This much energy is enough to alarm even the Great Fairy of the Valley, who opens her chamber and encourages Zelda to use her fountain as their newest main camp. Everyone is thrilled with this except Sia, who sends a few uber-charged foes their way. Darunia steps up to the plate and lures the enemies right in, while Impa and Zelda prepare for a fairy-charged attack right outside the fountain. While this is all going down, Sia is still soul-shattering herself to power up her enemies, and finally hooks up Volga with a fraction of this energy. This skyrockets Volga already insane power, and the beast literally becomes unstoppable.
I told you to shut up!
Ding! The magic circle is ready, and with the combined power of the Triforce of Wisdom, Triforce of Courage, and the power of the Great Fairy, everyone loyal to Sia around the vicinity of the Great Fairy Fountain is deleted from this reality. Well, everyone except Volga, who just brushes off the attack like it was nothing and responds with, "I didn't hear no bell." Listen, we in the Muso community all know the golden rule. Do not approach Lu Bu. And while he may not be the Lu Bu, he might as well be channeling Lu Bu's energy directly here. Unfortunately, Zelda breaks the golden rule and steps up to the Dragon Knight. But rather than fighting him with her rapier, Zelda instead channels the energy of Miles Edgeworth of all people and breaks him in a little game of mind chess. Yeah, I'm not actually joking, by the way. Volga has been fighting using a fraction of Sia's dark magic, which, if you would like an analogy outside of Dynasty Warriors... Oh, I got it! It's like Volga is wearing a golden Tanuki suit from Super Mario 3D Land. Zelda manages to worm inside the dragon's head and go, "Aren't you like the most powerful warrior in all of Hyrule? What are you doing having to rely on dark magic?" This play works, because remember, for one thing, Volga actually swore off his loyalty to Sia a while ago, and was just fighting at this point because he wanted a strong challenge, knowing the Hyrulean forces already proved their strength a long time ago. Being called a soy boy for relying on Sia's steroids probably wasn't helping him with his ego, so he pushes the dark magic out of his system and demands a true fight to the bitter end. Link agrees because I'm playing as him, and after a bit of intense heat, Volga eventually takes a knee in battle, accepting his defeat with honor. So, who's left? Oh, that's right, it's just Sia now. Well, the showdown between Link and Sia is finally at hand. Who will be the one to finally fall? The hero with the mighty legendary sword that eliminates all darkness with a mighty blow? Or the mighty dark sorceress on the brink of a mental breakdown, having carved her soul into, perhaps, too many thin slices? Oh yeah, of course, this isn't even the final battle. I even told you all that before. Zelda, Lana, Darunia, and Software Update just got in my freaking way. Okay, you know what? Zelda, Lana, Darunia, and Link all begin their march up the ruins. Wait, hang on. This is important. Wait, what were we doing? Oh yeah. Sia duplicates herself into 4 identical versions and 6 herself on every remaining hero. By this point, your warrior should be strong enough level to where getting to the real Sia shouldn't be too tough, especially if you're playing as either Link with the Master Sword or Sheik. Yes, Sheik. Just trust me on that. Every time you defeat a clone, Sia becomes more and more agitated, until you reach the final Sia, the real one, and by now, she can barely think straight anymore. Link lands the final blow on Sia, who finally topples over onto her back on the floor. It's over. Lana rushes over to her and cradles Sia in her arms. All Sia wanted was to be with Link, and Ganondorf twisted her desires so much that she ended up channeling her own spirit into the Gate of Souls, forcing the hero to emerge within this era of Hyrule's history, all so she could be with him. And as we all know, Lana feels the same way about Link, unable to hide her true feelings. However, unlike Sia, Lana accepts the fact that Link won't be with her, knowing that sometimes the one you really want to love is simply locked off due to the whims of fate and a generational prophecy. Sia then realizes at that moment that when her light was ripped away from her, so too was her ability to understand her limitations and how it related to her as a deity. And now sharing this understanding with her finally makes peace with Lana. At least that's what I'm going with! Because what Sia is actually saying in her response is really, really cringe, and I exercise my right as the narrator of the story to change it for the purposes of this video. And so, Sia fades away, leaving Lana as the new rightful bearer of the Triforce of Power. This also places Lana as the rightful heir to the Gate of Souls, who channels its power to first help send Darunia, Fi, and everyone else back to their original homes. She then begins undoing the Convergence with Link and Zelda's help, using the full power of the Triforce to separate the 3 past eras of Hyrule brought in from fusing with this current era and splitting them back up to their original times in history. Lana gives one final goodbye to everyone and sets off alone to close the final gate that Sia had forced open, clearly upset that Sia is gone. Oh wait, Sia is gone? Does that mean... Oh. Okay, real quick. We know Lana told Impa that pulling the Master Sword shouldn't have been enough to release Ganondorf's soul fragment from the pedestal. So how come Ganondorf managed to reassemble himself back to full strength anyway? Okay, so Lana was either lying or was just wrong. That's a bit unfortunate. Also, Zelda, you and Link already encountered and fought Ganondorf in a much weaker state back at the Temple of Souls. Did you two forget that? What, was the battle with Sia just that mesmerizing, or do the two of you have Alzheimer's? Well, that's just jingles, because now all 4 chunks of Ganondorf's soul are reunited and the Demon King is finally ready to crack some heads. He makes his way to the Gerudo Desert and lays siege there, forming an army as he does. He also summons Zant and Girahim and appoints them as his generals. I get why Girahim would join Ganondorf, but why Zant would agree to this after Ganondorf literally forsakened him during the events of Twilight Princess, I don't have a clear answer for you.
Stop it. Get some help.
Perhaps this is merely a replica of Zant, an incomplete version formed by the same dark magic of Twilight that Linkle found crystallized. I mean, it kinda makes sense. Again, Zant is dismembered during Twilight Princess, and the Zant we see in Hyrule Warriors makes no mention of being brought back from the dead. Come to think of it, Zant doesn't even seem to bear any deep grudge against his murderer during this game, only seeing Midna as a false queen in the way of his right to the throne. You'd think he'd behave way more viciously towards both Midna and Ganondorf after being both slain and abandoned respectively. But that's just a game theory, so I don't need to dwell on it much further. Where were we? With an unusual lack of the actual Gerudo race, there are 3 separate monster factions that live in the Gerudo Desert. 2 of these factions are dragon tribes, unrelated to Volga's tribe in the Elden Caves. One tribe overtook the village, and the other tribe settled in the Arbiter's grounds. The 3rd faction are simply the leftovers that Sia had pulled using the Gate of Souls. When she finally fell, they were left without a leader and were soon imprisoned by the 2 dragon tribes. Ganondorf immediately gets to work on reclaiming the desert as his alone, taking on both the Aerilphos and the Lizalfos rather effortlessly. Zant and Girahim free the imprisoned forces and force them to serve Ganondorf with the threat of extermination. This battle is honestly a cakewalk, especially if you have control over all 3 of the warriors. In the vanilla version of the game on Wii U, I noticed that Zant would lose HP pretty quick, and after requesting for backup, Ganondorf would simply scoff and ignore him. Again, Zant for some reason is clearly not aware of Ganondorf's nature. It has to be a different entity altogether. If Matt, Pat, and Tom are to be believed, this is the same Demon King that met Zant back in Twilight Princess. He's not from a different timeline. Girahim, meanwhile, lets himself get captured at the Arbiter's grounds, only to solo 5 Aerilphos at once without breaking a sweat. The severe commotion eventually draws out the likes of King Dodongo, Goma, and Manhandla, all at once from their separate domains within the desert. Oh good, 3 giant bosses all at once. Again. This game warns you not to let them team up, but honestly, unless you screwed up real bad, the 3 monsters will take their sweet time to approach each other, so at this point the battle becomes a simple boss rush. I took out Dodongo first because there's a bit of time giving out dialogue between when he shows up compared to the other 2 bosses. I defeated Goma next because, you know, Manhandla. Ganondorf slays all 3 bosses and with their deaths, regains Gerudo Desert as his domain and his main base of operations. Until he moves into Hyrule Castle, of course. Ganondorf's next move is to once again attempt to reclaim the Triforce of Power, which means that a certain blue-haired Sorceress of Light's head will soon be on the chopping block. The moment she saw Ganondorf's now ginormous army approaching, she sends out a request for reinforcements, but almost as soon as her messengers depart, Ganondorf blockades the Valley of Seers, boxing her in. Regardless, without Cia to back her up, Lana attempts to flee. Having just captured the South Sanctum as he arrived, Ganondorf orders that the whole valley be overrun, beginning to close in on the pyramid and leaving Lana stranded. So Lana's in a bit of a slump. She attempts to trap Zant and Girahim within the sanctums, but Ganondorf is less than impressed and retaliates by closing Lana off from the power of all three sanctums. Lana next tries to sneak 2 Goron soldiers past Ganondorf's army to snipe his base, but the 2 are disposed of almost as quickly as they were dispatched. She tries to raise morale with the help of a rally captain.
And it's gone.
The support team has finally arrived, spearheaded by Impa, who uses secret Sheikah martial arts shadow clone jutsu to take on both of Ganondorf's generals.
And it's gone.
Who says that making the same joke over and over isn't funny? As a treat to those of you who made it this far into the video and haven't played the game yet but want to eventually, I'll reveal the Impa fight for you. If she's holding the Naginata when you approach her and not the giant blade, you know that particular Impa is one of the fakes. The game makes it seem like all of the Impas on the battlefield are fakes and the real one will only reveal herself once Lana is threatened atop the ruins. But this is actually not true. The real Impa can appear anywhere. During my practice run, she was directly below the East Sanctum, but as you can see in my recorded run, she's now hiding in the West Ruins. Ganondorf has reached the entrance to the ruins and Lana is running out of ammo. Or is she? Remember how during Cia's last stand, the Dark Sorceress split herself into 4 literal copies to push everyone back?
What?
Well, Lana remembers that too, and creates 3 versions of herself, and unlike Impa, all of them are real. This leads into one of the funniest lines in the game, but this also leads into the hardest part of this battle. If any of the 3 Lanas reach their respective escape point, it's game over. Luckily, 2 of them follow the same path at first, so you can distract them for a short while with one of the other warriors while beelining to the lone Lana and taking her out first. At least that's what I do. Funnily enough, I recorded this fight on normal difficulty the first time because I honestly didn't want to deal with the triple Lana situation, but I kinda underestimated Ganondorf's levels because I clobbered the doubles before they could even split away from each other. So for the sake of showing how hard this is, I played this level a 3rd time and recorded myself again. Lana managed to mess with Ganondorf for quite a while, but it's all over. Ganondorf wrests the Triforce of Power from Lana and knocks her away. Interestingly enough, he does not steal the Gate of Souls from her, despite its immeasurable potential. I guess now that his soul is reassembled, he sees no use for it. Instead, he moves his army to the center of Hyrule, where his final 2 prizes remain, the Triforce of Wisdom and the Triforce of Courage. Link immediately takes up his sword and confronts Ganondorf, only to be slapped around pretty easily. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little shocked after recently replaying this for how easy it was to body Link. Impa, still recovering from her battle at the valley, steps in with a plan of her own, only to be intercepted by Girahim. And that's basically the majority of this fight story, holy shit. So as you can see, the battle is going great for Ganondorf. This level is a bit harder to narrate because it's just Link and Zelda taking turns trying to wipe out Ganondorf's army, and it's not even a close match. I played this mission on hero mode and I was still fairly sweeping through the enemy forces, with the only real hiccup being Impa's mad dash to the Fairy Fountain. To win this battle, you need to defeat both Link and Zelda around the same time, otherwise they'll keep recovering and coming back. Just bring one's health to near 0 and then crush the other one with a different character, which you can then finish off the first. If you take too long, then you can witness Link using the power of the Triforce to barrage your keeps, which is kinda cool, but I still think you shouldn't have any real trouble with this fight. What's important here is the ending. Oh no! Oh no!
Seeing that the battle was won, Ganondorf vanished from sight.
What do you mean he vanished? What does that even imply? Did he make a trip to the Sacred Realm or something? Well, apparently he's gone. At least for now. Zelda quickly realizes that if there was any time to strike, it was now. She, Link, and Lana meet up at the previous base of Ganondorf and begin their plans to uproot his army, starting from the desert. Unfortunately, these three knuckleheads forgot what the dictionary definition of a desert actually is, and quickly begin to melt under the beaming sun. So yeah, this battle has a secondary time limit of sorts. None of the main three can fall in this battle or it's game over, all while the desert heat will slowly drain your allies' health. Specifically, whoever isn't guarding the village base. Link and Lana work to secure the oases while Zelda protects the southern village as their current base, which by this point in time has been abandoned by the dragon since they joined Ganon's army. Zelda's intuition was that Zant and Girahim had been standing by in the Gerudo Desert since Ganondorf's victory, and it seems that she was spot on as Lana discovers Girahim in the southern oasis. Girahim. Right. Are these guys seriously pulling off what Wizwo did? Ugh, never mind. During the bout in the oasis, Girahim suddenly turns tail and makes a break for it. Lana makes the conscious decision to follow him, given her lack of alternate options, while during the pursuit, helping Link gain control of the other oasis. Honestly, I could give less of a damn about you, Mr. Obvious Trap, but I have to follow you in order to continue the battle, so just hold your horses and be quiet while I secure the northern oasis first. Oh, by the way, securing both oases stops the heat exhaustion problem for your allies. Lana chases Girahim back to the Arbiter's grounds and defeats him, just like that. And just like that, Zant springs the trap, sealing off the Arbiter's grounds and isolating Lana from the rest of the Hyrulean army. This part is a little bit confusing when it comes to isolation of the stragglers, because the story will always point Lana as the one that was tricked and separated even if you don't choose to play as her. But in game, the area that's locked off is, well, not where Lana was lured to. In reality, whoever was in the North Oasis when you chased Girahim is the one that's actually in danger. In my case, that's Lincoln Proxy. And even having said that, what Zant actually did was lock off the three sections of the desert from each other. Only the village and the South Desert are untouched by Zant by the time you have to reunite the team. Okay, long story short, Link is here, Lana is here, Zelda is here, and all three pathways are sealed off so no one can reach or support each other. This forces Lana to fight through wave after wave on her own, looking for a weak spot in the enemy's offense. She eventually manages to jump down from a ledge after securing a keep atop a cliff, but she runs into Zant halfway, who is making his own way towards Zelda's main camp. The two clash after Zelda closes the village gates, and again, it is abundantly clear that this is not the real Zant. Okay, well, I guess I did say that I don't believe that this Zant, you know, the one that's been serving Ganondorf up to this point, is the real Zant either, but you know what I meant. Come on! Anyways, Lana defeats Zant, who vanishes once again, which opens the gate to the north where Link is. Even after both Girahim and Zant's defeat, the monsters just keep coming, which is beginning to take a toll on Lana. Completely surrounded with a severe disadvantage and with barely any options left to help survive, an exhausted Lana decides to make one more final gamble, sending an SOS through the Gate of Souls with her magic. The gamble pays off, now with an entire squad to help Link and Lana push back against the growing enemy forces pushing them. Oh, they just broke through the settlement gates. Yeah, a lot of enemy forces. Why are they still gunning for us if their commanders have fled? Says Zelda, who clearly must not have been paying attention. Well, Lana has been paying attention, and immediately points out that the real Zant and Girahim must still be somewhere in the desert among the chaos. The gang eventually finds them hiding in the Arbiter's sacred grounds, where the final showdown with them begin. Just like how easy it was for Ganondorf to crush Link, it is a bit disappointing just how anticlimactic this final showdown with Zant and Girahim is. Yeah, this battle can seem pretty tough since they're both coming at you, but I have a feeling that even if this was at the hardest difficulty, I'd still be a bit underwhelmed. Well, I suppose it doesn't really matter. The real final fight is fast approaching. So, while we were going through all that rigmarole in the desert, it turns out that Impa and a few other soldiers were scouting the land, pinpointing Ganondorf's location. At least in the beginning, the Demon King was most likely in the Sacred Realm, where he could prepare his dark power without any interference from mortal forces. After a while, though, he eventually returns to Hyrule, sees that Hyrule Castle is empty, and proceeds to redecorate. Yep, he essentially does what he did in Ocarina of Time and just transforms the palace into that of his own design, complete with a giant sword stabbing the top. A little too on the nose, if you ask me, but hey, I'm not Ganondorf's advisor, he can decorate however he wants. Well, no, actually. That's not your castle to redecorate in the first place. Somebody better go tell Impa.
From this fortress, he prepared for an unspeakable ritual.
Unspeakable ritual? You already fused your soul back together and you have all three pieces of the Triforce. What more is there to do besides rule the land with an iron fist? Unlock his full power. Bruh, you already won! What are you waiting for? Princess Zelda to come waltzing to your new front door? So anyways, Princess Zelda gathers all the warriors who had joined them throughout this war, from those who lived in this era from the start to those who journeyed from across time and space, and together the final forces of Hyrule come waltzing to Ganondorf's new front door. Before we even start this one, half of the battle consists of Ganondorf in his castle just charging his ki Dragon Ball style thanks to his unspeakable ritual, which, because of how the game is wording it, I'm making an assumption that Ganon is further increasing his power by devouring puppies or something. I'd be more dramatic, seeing as how this is the final battle against Ganondorf, except this isn't the final battle in the game, yet alone the timeline, and that unspeakable ritual aspect of the story is so unnecessary and silly. Yeah, no. Sorry, Ganondorf. Of course, this is still a huge battle, so I'm not going to be that harsh towards this fight. Also, because it's the final battle for the vanilla Wii U version of the game, it's actually hard, but like the fun kind of hard, not the Argarok and Zant violating your allied base kind of hard. Anyways, with Zant and Girahim gone from this era for good and Ganondorf holed up in the castle he jacked from Zelda, the Demon King barricades the field right outside the castle walls and then proceeds to summon 2 Argaroks to ravage the Hyrulean soldiers. Because it's not like we have anything else to worry about, am I right, guys? While the army is dealing with the dragons, Darunia notices that a part of the wall blocking the castle's front yard is in rough shape, and summons his tribe to the ruined Hyrule field with a Bombchu in tow. This is the same wall that Dodongo plowed through in the first battle. That's a neat bit of continuity there. With one of the Argaroks taken care of, Impa moves to guard Zelda while Link assists Darunia with clearing a path for the Bombchu, leaving Lana and Midna to finish off the remaining Twilight Dragon. This is one of the few battles where you pretty much have to swap between playable warriors and even command them to move around with the map, which I like a ton. That's why you're seeing me in the pause menu a lot for this fight. With Link's valiance, the Bombchu successfully breaks through the weakened wall, and with this new hole, the forces of Hyrule seize the fort and squeeze into the castle grounds. Of course, the moment when you finally have access to the castle's front door is the moment Ganondorf swings that door open himself, fully charged and ready to rock. And yeah, he's pretty uber-charged here, launching lightning everywhere. Zelda orders everyone to fall back, sensing Ganondorf's power increasing even further, but she does not outright order a retreat. Instead, Zelda commands a feint, having the main forces give off the illusion of a retreat. She then commences the true plan into action. Darunia stands strong and duels Ganondorf one-on-one as Link is ordered to race to the east gate of Hyrule Castle. The duel is quite one-sided and Link is only given so much time before Darunia is forced to retreat for real. Luckily for me, Link is at level 186, so I think I'll be fine. Surprise! It's a trap! All Darunia had to do was lead Ganondorf away from the castle grounds and let the Demon King run wild, fully distracted, completely unaware that Link was in the process of seizing the castle from right under his nose. And with the castle now back under the control of the forces of light, a significant chunk of Ganondorf's power was lost, tipping the scales of battle back towards Zelda's favor. Link takes the opportunity and guns for the Demon King's throat, and is successful. But anyone who's played a Zelda game knows that it's not over yet. This is Ganon. Not my favorite interpretation appearance-wise, but I'm not here to judge these characters on how they look. Either way, somebody better start playing Crush 40 because Link is about to show Ganon what he's made of. Ganon in Hyrule Warriors is fine. He's a giant boss and that sucks, but he's absolutely not the worst of the worst. At least not in my opinion. You still have to wait for him to start prepping for an attack in order to actually damage him, and that's annoying, but I noticed that Ganon is more prone to actually using the attacks that can trigger a counter. Or maybe I've just been extremely lucky. Is it random when a giant boss decides to use the attack? Does the playable character have to be at a certain distance? I don't know, honestly. It feels random. Since Ganon is the final boss, you have to use a specific item for every attack that he plans to make, and every time you successfully land a hit with that particular item, you don't have to worry about using the same item again on him. Except the boomerang, because of course this prick makes it so the attack that references the worst boss in the game has to be dealt with twice. Manhandla. So, before we continue, a really funny outtake happened. Something got into my eye as I entered the Ganon fight and began screwing with my concentration. Like, my eye started to itch real bad, to where I had to rub my eyelid with a nearby cloth just as Ganon was using the Manhandla attack, which caused my paw to slip and accidentally switch me to play as Midna as Link was getting blasted in the face, as well as accidentally enter Focus Spirit in an area where no enemies were around to waste this on. So that was unfortunate. And yeah, my eye turned red from what I'm assuming was a thick strand of my fluffy hair. Not a good time for my eye to require a washout, but that is my luck with any video game, yet alone my favorite one. I'm such a bad gamer that this video was doomed from the start. I gotta time this properly or I will die. Zelda prepares the light arrows in order to counteract Ganon's dark power, and the beast retaliates by spawning monsters with the power to weaken the light, which I would ask why he didn't think to use that sealing magic in previous events on the Zelda timeline, but I like to imagine that Ganon had prepared for this because he had been bested by them for so long, and simply waited for the moment that the light arrows were brought in to throw everyone off. And it works, but not enough for the Hyrulean forces to give up. Link continues to whittle down Ganon's strength while I had Impa, Lana, and Midna each take down a dark summoner, and once all three were confirmed to be ceased, it was time to start using these damn light arrows. Oh, and I guess we better be quick still, because the lightning I mentioned earlier is now beginning to crash down exclusively on Hyrule Castle, which became our new allied base after Ganondorf transformed. After several heavy blows, Ganon begins to waver, giving Link the final resolve to finish him off. Or, you know, whoever you decide to play as for this final battle. I went with Link because, well, cinematics. With one final roar, the beast crashes before the heroes, and the Triforce is pulled out from within the beast, back to their respective owners, Link and Zelda, as well as Lana. Together, the three bears use the Triforce to unleash one final attack on Ganon, a beam of light that reduces the Demon King to nothing but a distorted soul once more. With the threat of Ganon gone for good, the heroes from across time and space fade away, returning once more to their original eras. I'm also making the assumption that Midna's curse goes away once she returns home. I can only hope, cause she's still in her cursed imp form as she fades away. Lana then turns to Link and explains the final step to restoring peace to Hyrule, returning the Master Sword to its pedestal within the sacred temple and sealing Ganon's soul once more. I mean, I'd argue that they should grab the Force Sword and quarter his soul again, but I guess that would have a moot purpose, since as we all saw, that clearly didn't work last time. I mean, it was still a good idea regardless, but screw it. Link and Zelda depart once more to seal Ganon for good, as Lana looks out towards the two of them before departing herself for some unfinished business, quietly saying farewell to the hero of the multiverse. But wait, we're not done here! Only a few hours or so after Link, Zelda, and Lana all depart the castle to finish sealing off Ganondorf and yada yada yada, Impa and the remaining soldiers opted to stay behind. You know, to start tending to the wounded, cleaning up the battlefield, all that jazz. Well, unfortunately for them, several monsters didn't quite get the memo that Ganon had fallen in battle, and soon enough, another horde of monsters began filling up all over Hyrule Field. Like, way more than the soldiers probably would have expected at this point. Lord almighty, the fight with Ganon had just wrapped up! Just as it seemed like these leaderless monsters were about to wipe out the remaining few and already battered soldiers, who should show up but the true hero of Hyrule, finally arriving at her intended destination. Don't get me wrong, Linkle is very dense, but god damn it, I love her. I love playing as her, I love playing through her battles, and like I said before, I don't care that her story has more holes in it than Junko had. Oh wait. The point is, I like Linkle in Hyrule Warriors. And better late than ever, girl. The battle against Ganon was hours ago. Of course it's good that she still made it regardless, because Impa and the remaining soldiers are at wit's end. Linkle immediately begins bailing out the exhausted soldiers, clearing out the scattered monsters as she goes. But honestly, saving them all in one go is harder than it seems, especially on higher difficulties. I'm playing with an overleveled Linkle on hard mode, and I only just barely managed to reach all of them in time. Also, every time a Hyrulean captain flees, the Moblin that defeated them gets a morale boost and starts gunning for the allied base. So that's fun. Once all the soldiers are given time to rest, Linkle and Impa come face to face with this fucker. Dark King Dodongo is seen as a menace among my friend group, and that's because it breaks the rules of the giant boss, at least for the majority of the fight. One's immediate reaction upon seeing this thing would be to bust out the bombs and wait for him to open his mouth, and you would be correct to do that under normal circumstances. This dickhead does not flinch. He doesn't react if you chuck bombs at his gaping mouth. He doesn't reveal a weak point gauge if you use up your magic meter. He doesn't even take damage if you're actually paying attention. He straight up turned on God mode. If you're not paying attention, then you might think it's a glitch. And I know people that quit the battle and restarted thinking that they accidentally triggered a bug. Except it's not a bug. Impa and Linkle both comment on this predicament, and things get worse when a whole new wave of monsters pour out from the southeast corner of the map. So, what the banana are you supposed to do to defeat this monstrosity? Well, I will tell you, because the solution is actually super simple. You actually have to ignore Dark King Dodongo until you take out the two monsters that spawned alongside the boss elsewhere on the map. You don't even need to actually worry about the horde in the corner yet. Or at all, honestly. Because thankfully, it's at this point where the soldiers that Linkle rescued return to the battlefield to back her up. They all charge at the newly spawned in enemies as Linkle's compass begins to shine. This time, the random light-related effect is to literally just turn off the invincibility mode that was affecting Dark Dodongo.
That's not funny! It's never been funny! It's never gonna be funny!
Yeah, I'm not kidding. Once the Hyrulean captains return to the battlefield, the game just flips a switch and now you can beat up the giant boss for real. I feel like I should be madder at this than I really am for just how thrown in all that was. But I'm okay with it just because there are still so many monsters to take out by this point. If Dark Dodongo was the only enemy left on the battlefield, yeah, I would have been a bit miffed. So at this point, I just went around the map and let Linkle erase as many monsters from Hyrule Field as she could. Once she meets back up with Impa, the two quickly finish off Dodongo, with Linkle landing the final blow. And with Dark King Dodongo's death, Hyrule Castle really is safe now. Impa approaches Linkle as the soldiers all cheer in relief, thanking her for jumping into the fray when the Hyrulean army needed it the most. Linkle is simply happy that she was able to help, as any legendary hero should. Bit of an awkward time to bring it up, but I should probably mention once more that while Impa and Linkle were up against Dark Dodongo, Zelda and Link were sealing away Ganon's soul, and by the time the two had returned, peace had truly returned to Hyrule. For a grand total of most likely one whole day. I don't even need to swoop in with a meme react from some random other game. Tetra was already there and did my work for me. What happened, Tetra, was that a new Convergence just tore into Hyrule seemingly out of nowhere! Thankfully, I suppose, this one is smaller than the previous Convergence, where earlier we had to deal with 4 different eras from Hyrule's insane timeline being zip-tied together all at once. In the case of this Convergence, we're only dealing with one additional era, although several different parts of the same land were smashed together in the process. Link is summoned back to the castle by Impa, who requests that he investigate the new Convergence. Since he had to return the Master Sword to its pedestal, I like to imagine that Link packed a few different weapons and began experimenting with them from this moment onwards. And it gives me an excuse to showcase what other feats that this era of Link is capable of. You're welcome, Internet! Upon crossing the boundary and entering a different looking village, he runs into, shocker, the pirate captain Tetra from the era of the Great Sea, who got separated from the rest of her crew due to the new Convergence. During their meeting, a clan of Blinn suddenly stormed Windfall Village and attacked the villagers, taking advantage of the Convergence in an attempt to expand their territory. Tetra was having none of this, and teams up with Link to drive them back to the Forsaken Fortress. Wait a second. Forsaken Fortress? I thought we were on Windfall Island. Well, we were. Remember when I said that this new Convergence smashed parts of this second era together? Well, as silly as this is to say, I meant that quite literally.
Are we done? Are you gonna cut the shit now?
Yeah, I guess so.
Whoever created this second Convergence managed to take multiple parts of several islands from the Great Seas and crudely fuse them alongside the Hyrule we see in Hyrule Warriors 1, which means that Link and Tetra can in fact very easily beat back Boss Blinn's clan back to the Forsaken Fortress. See this line, Blinn? You do not cross the line into Windfall Village. Stay on the Forsaken Fortress side. Wait, they only conquered the fortress right before attempting to conquer Windfall? Does that mean that they're not teamed up with that stupid bird? Now, I will fully admit that it has been a stupidly long time since I played Wind Waker, but I'm pretty sure that the Helmerach King was slain by a certain other hero of Hyrule. I guess he took a page from the Mushroom Kingdom's history book and revived himself. Just like Petey Piranha and every single story enemy in the Mario and Luigi series. My headcanon is simply that the Helmerach King managed to survive his battle with the Hero of the Winds, and since no one else had a reason to return to the fortress after the events of Wind Waker, the Helmerach King simply continued to live there, now with just a bit more free time since, you know, his master died. I'm getting off track again. As it turns out, the Blinn clan had managed to drive the bird out of the fortress. As a result, the Helmerach King chooses a new place close by to rest for a bit, in Windfall Square. You know, where the people are? Yeah, that's a great spot to roost in, as if the villagers didn't have enough to worry about with the Blinns dicking around.
Stupid bird.
This battle quickly turns into a game of capture the flag, where Link and Tetra have to keep beating back the Blinns from taking over Windfall. The Blinns order monsters to stop Link and Tetra from taking over the fort, all while the Helmerach King keeps parading around the place attacking whoever and whatever it feels like. Tetra gets pissed at this behavior and targets the bird, who then appears to fly off indefinitely. I sense some PTSD-related aggression there. She must still be bitter with him since the events of Wind Waker. While that's going on, Link finally steals the flag at the fort and beats down the boss Blinn at the back of the fortress. After returning to Windfall, he looks up above the village to see the Helmerach King finally departing from the island, holding an unconscious Tetra in his talons. Wait, what? How? When? Also, Ganondorf got his face sliced in half in this timeline. Who are you kidnapping another girl for? Jared is already in prison! Link chases the Helmerach King, most likely on Epona, but the bird is slightly faster and flees the area of the Convergence with Tetra, looking for a new place to roost. The Helmerach King eventually settles down in the Gerudo Desert, dropping Tetra nearby while choosing the Arbiter's Grounds as a new nesting place for himself. As it just so happens, Lana has just arrived at the desert herself, but why did she even come here? Well, you see, I mentioned earlier that Lana had some unfinished business that she was determined to work on, and that business is revealed to be looking for Sia. Yeah, the story implies that Lana had to pick up the mantle as the Guardian of Time, but the Blue Sorceress isn't convinced that Sia was actually dead. And to be fair, if anyone would know if she was truly gone from this world, it would most likely be the mystical being that was created from Sia's own powerful magic. Which leads us directly to this cutscene. I kinda glossed over it earlier because I was trying to be funny, but I really should explain it. Believe it or not, this scene was actually in the correct chronological order when I played it right after Link and Zelda sealed Ganon at the Sacred Temple. I'm not a fan of how the game just kinda breezes past the severity of the situation, but what we're seeing here is a dark force ambushing Lana at the Valley of Seers and stealing both the Triforce of Power and the Gate of Souls from her. This is the same dark force that created the second Convergence, and although I can't prove it, was also responsible for Dark King Dodongo. Lana was so hyper-focused on pinpointing Sia's life force that someone, or something, was able to just get the drop on her just like that. And whoever this is now has the Triforce of Power. You know, that thing that granted Ganondorf with the blessing of immortality and immeasurable strength? Yeah, that! And don't even get me started on the Gate of Souls again. We've seen what that thing can do. Lana wastes no time in tracking down the power from the stolen Gate of Souls, and this hunt leads her to the Gerudo Desert, where a duplicated gate has opened up and is pouring monsters out, just like before. Oh wait, that's a lot of gates. And of all of the Kingdom of Hyrule where he could have chosen to roost, the Helmerach King just happened to choose this spot?
Horseshit!
You might think that I'm being a bit too harsh on the bird here, and fair enough, I let far stupider events happen in this video without even batting an eye. But here's the thing, it really is just a coincidence, as evidenced by these lines. If you want my opinion on this, both Lana and the Helmerach King traveling to this desert and winding up at the same spot at the same time is just a little bit too convenient for my tastes. It's not a glaring plot hole like the imprisoned appearing on Skyloft or a straight up contradiction like Midna being an imp before her Hexer was even able to meet her. This is just silly. It's very silly. This does not dampen my views on the overall story. It's just, wow. What are the odds? Lana begins working to close the multiple gates as Tetra breaks free from her confines and flees the range of the Helmerach King. When these two characters bump into each other for the first time, I think Lana had actually asked where Tetra suddenly appeared from, and the latter responded with sarcasm. Instead, the dialogue has Lana asking who she was, which leads to a bit of an awkward exchange between the two. This is probably just a simple translation mistake, but I figured I'd clarify what I think was actually going on. Once the bird sees that Tetra made a break for it, he begins to pursue her. Lana is left left a bit confused, but nonetheless doesn't hesitate at all to start attacking the bird upon seeing it lunge at Tetra. Link finally catches up to the action himself, and the three all begin wailing on the Hilmarok King. The commotion drives the nearby local monsters into an uproar, who start attacking the trio out of rage as the bird makes a hasty retreat. It doesn't take long before both the monsters and the Hilmarok King are all silenced. I'm guessing that the bird decides to flee elsewhere, but since we never see him again after this, I suppose we can also theorize that we possibly killed him for real this time. I'm not really sure. If we recall the events of the previous Convergence, removing the gates that bridged the different eras was the key to reversing the rifts and setting the timelines to their correct positions, including any gates that were set outside the rifts like the one that was in the Valley of Seers. However, all the gates that she detected have now been closed, and yet Lana discovers that she is unable to undo this new convergence, not even after they all leave the desert. Something is clearly locking the rift in place, something with grand powers that even succeeds Lana. Something, or someone, that wields a great knowledge of the timeline of Hyrule and is, or was, in possession of an artifact that can manipulate said timeline. Have you put 2 and 2 together yet? Yeah, so has Lana, who encourages Link and Tetra to help her find Sia. Oh, spoiler alert, I guess. Oh my god. It is at this moment, while the three are debating on how to plan their next move, that another face from the era of the Great Sea steps in. King Daphne's Nohansen Hyrule. Hey, it's the boat guy! I like to imagine that he approached Impa and Zelda first at Hyrule Castle and explained the situation, with the two then encouraging him to locate Link for assistance. The king had been a second-hand witness to this new convergence from the Wind Waker side, and had a pretty good idea of what this new villain's plan was. King Daphne's revealed that the Dark Force has one primary goal: to become an immortal force of this world by absorbing the power of the Guardian of Time. Lana is the Guardian of Time now, if you want to be technical, but her entire existence is that of light magic. Extremely powerful light magic, I should mention, but the only thing this force wanted from Lana was the Triforce of Power. Why settle only for her when there's a being of the exact same composition except more powerful, specializes in dark magic, and at present is in the weakest, most vulnerable state that they could ever be in? Well, the game was being pretty vague as to whether or not Sia was gone or not, but if a being from another timeline was targeting something with a similar magical makeup, and it's not Lana, well shit, I guess she's alive. With an asterisk at the end? So it turns out that when Sia was trying to defeat Link and Lana at the end of her conquest, she ended up using too much of her own life force to power herself and her army, and ended up losing her body, but not enough for her soul to fade away entirely, leaving her a malleable spirit. The best example I can give is in Warriors Orochi 4 again, where we see both Gaia in an orbular spirit form, still able to interact with those around her, but not much else aside from talking and floating around. Yeah, something like that. It's essentially the equivalent of getting beaten so bad you fall into a coma instead of succumbing to death. But that's still dangerous to a human, and Sia herself was still dangerously close to fading away completely. Had an outside force not interfered, Lana would have eventually tracked down Sia's fractured soul and very likely would have been able to save her. But Sia didn't expect to survive and accepted her death, hence her stupid words to Lana atop the Valley of Seers. Except, something did interfere, but what this interference exactly was, neither Daphnis nor Lana seem to know yet. All we know at this point in the story is that Sia's magic is still detectable somewhere in Hyrule. That's more than enough for Lana, who immediately gets back to searching for this dark force's energy, and with the help of the others, she pinpoints exactly where the darkness is growing in power. Or maybe Daphne's just told her. I'm sure he probably already knew, but it's not a big deal. I don't think it's that hard to believe that Lana can sense other beings of magic, especially Sia's. The growing dark magic is coming from the Temple of Souls, and upon getting closer, Lana is shocked to discover that all of the dark magic is coming from Sia. She is the source of the second convergence. Except we already know that can't be possible. Don't worry, I'm sure that Lana is just as confused as we all are as to what's happening, so let's just head on over there already. Upon arrival, the Hyrulean forces are met with a dark parallel of Sia, and unlike last time we dealt with a dark doppelganger, I can actually explain this one. Whoever this dark Sia truly is, they are attempting to steal Sia's power and absorb her being into them. That's why it feels like Sia is the one responsible for the second convergence. It's trying to become the new real Sia, to conquer and possess her powers in its entirety. I should also mention that according to King Daphnis, this other being is supposedly trapped in a dark world, and with the second convergence, they were able to reach out from the Wind Waker era into this one in order to drag Sia into the Dark Land to absorb her powers much easier. I'm not sure if this is the same Dark World as the Sacred Realm that Ganon twisted into corruption in Ocarina of Time, the one that we explore in Link to the Past, but I wouldn't doubt it. This realm does exist in all of the timeline branches after all. Lana attacks the Dark Clone only for it to vanish out of harm's way. This is the moment that gives Lana the opportunity to pull the real Sia out from the shadows under Daphne's direction. Desperate not to lose its grasp on Sia, the Dark Double begins an onslaught, summoning as many monsters as it can without having to reappear itself in order to steal back Sia and absorb her soul for itself. I would say that the demigoddess is now safe from harm, but that would be a lie. This entire battle is a challenging collection of monster waves that target the fragile Sia and no one else. Keep at least one of your warriors next to Sia at all times while shuffling between the other 3 warriors across the temple to keep any and all enemies from entering the allied base in the center. A bit of a bad time to get flirty, don't you think? This desperation turns into obsession as Dark Sia's energy begins to drain from summoning so many monsters and eventually must return to the battlefield in order to steal Sia back. The Dark Being begins to approach with 2 Dark Links alongside her, because I suppose if you actually want to be Sia, you gotta have the same attractions. Link and Tetra are able to push it back so far that the being is completely depleted of energy, forcing it to return to its original base of operations, the Earth Temple. Wait. Wind Temple? No, wait, hang on. Oh my god, the second Convergence even fused these 2 temples together. It is after this dark presence escapes back to its sanctuary where Sia finally name drops who stole all her magic and abilities from her and tried to assimilate her essence into itself. Phantom Ganon. If, in case you need a refresher, because I know I did, Phantom Ganon and Ganondorf are not the same being. Phantom Ganon is a malevolent spirit that intentionally made itself look like its master. In most Zelda games, Ganondorf created Phantom Ganon, and in Ocarina of Time specifically, Ganondorf banishes Phantom Ganon to the Shadow Realm after the Hero of Time defeats it. The Phantom Ganon we encounter in Hyrule Warriors in particular is the one that originated in Wind Waker, so let's talk briefly about that version of Phantom Ganon. There's nothing really to discuss. It appears out of the blue in the Forsaken Fortress after you obtain the Master Sword, and again in Ganon's Tower. You shoot a light arrow at it during your final encounter, and it seemingly vaporizes, or at the very least is rendered to near uselessness. Perhaps it sensed the power from the Convergence and thought to use Sia's magic to restore itself to an even greater state, so that not even the light arrows can damage it. But that's me speculating again. We don't really get much here in terms of Phantom Ganon as a character. King Daphne's already had an idea that Phantom Ganon's spirit can access Hyrule from the Dark World, specifically through the 2 spliced temples. So that's where our final destination lies. Yup, in terms of the timeline for this game alone, we're reaching the last battle, and while it's nothing special, simply being a fight against a minor villain, it is still the battle to save Sia's life, so that's still kind of a big deal in my eyes. It's the rescue and redemption of the first main antagonist in Hyrule Warriors 1. What a nice bookend to the story. Also, let's not forget that this thing currently has the Triforce of Power. That's also a big deal. Well, no time like the present. Let's finish this massive story off with a bang. The final battle starts off with utter confusion as Phantom Ganon has managed to scramble the entire army across all 4 corners of this map, which would normally not be an issue, except that with the temples fused together, several parts of the battlefield are currently blocked off from each other. Also, lightning is spraying everywhere. Seriously, what is it with these villains and lightning strikes? With everyone split apart but still able to communicate, the King of Red Lions instructs everyone to capture the 4 Sages' Keeps, as the power from these areas will weaken both Phantom Ganon and cease the lightning. Link, Lana, Tetra, and Daphne's each work their way through the labyrinth, and in due time, they all manage to find and capture all 4 keeps. Phantom Ganon is not dismayed and continues to power itself up as Sia moves to secure the allied base for everyone else. By now, she's physically recovered thanks to Lana's aid, so she's willing to stand in this battle to help contain the power once Phantom Ganon has been bested. But her capacity for magic before that moment is not an option, because the malicious ghost is still wielding it for himself. Everyone soon regroups at the allied base and flushes out any remaining enemies that were targeting Sia. Again. By this point, Sia has had enough of the bullying and begins marching towards the Phantom with everyone else covering her. Phantom Ganon opens the chamber to his hideout, and it all comes to a head in the center of the 2 temples' merging point. Sia borrows the strength of the other warriors around her and fires a blast of light magic of all things at Phantom Ganon, showing that she is still capable of regaining the power of light that she lost, which is pretty neat to see. I also like the implication that Sia knew how to defeat Phantom Ganon as the original Guardian of Time, since the thing that severely weakened Phantom Ganon here was a light arrow substitute, similar to how he got bested in Wind Waker. This power move exhumes the last of Sia's already thin magical strength, and takes a step back to let the rest of the Hyrulean forces finish the job. Phantom Ganon is the last giant boss, thank Din. He doesn't require a specific item in order to exploit his weakness, but you still have to 1. Wait for him to use a specific move, 2. Pray that you don't accidentally get hit by that move, and 3. Hope that you are given enough time to actually chip away at his weak point gauge. At least this boss has more than one move that can activate the gauge, that spinning move and the death volley. However, I can't speak for anyone else, but it seems that every time I fight Phantom Ganon, he just spams that duplication simultaneous swing move, and I can never get him to stop. He loops that move. It's annoying, especially in adventure mode when you have a damn time limit and have to wait for him to use the correct move. And yet, I still think that Manhandla and the Imprisoned are worse. But we're not here to listen to me vent. We're here to watch 4 Hyrule warriors beat the snot out of a wannabe Ganon clone and let the 5th warrior redeem herself as well as steal back her powers of a demigoddess. God, that is so satisfying to watch no matter how many times I kill a giant boss. The power of light, as well as Link's strength, causes Phantom Ganon to disintegrate back into the Dark World without a way to return. The Triforce of Power returns to Lana, who immediately hands it off to Sia. With the source of the calamity now gone, the rift begins to grow unstable. Tetra and the King say their farewells before warping back to their side of the Convergence. Link, Lana, and Sia return to Hyrule Castle to deliver the news, where Zelda and Impa are waiting. Interestingly enough, we see that Sia and Lana are actually sharing the Triforce of Power, which I didn't think one could do. I guess Lana was born from Sia's powers, so I'm not gonna call it out or anything. And like I said, I really like this additional chapter of Sia being able to redeem herself. Zelda, Link, Lana, and Sia all activate the completed Triforce one last time to unmerge the second Convergence, causing the land of the Great Sea to split apart from itself and return to its original place on the timeline. Lana remains separated from Sia, and the two take up the roles as Guardians of Time together, continuing to watch the balance of Hyrule's flowing history while keeping the Triforce of Power safe and sound for many more eras to come. As for Link, well, time continues to march on for everyone, so I couldn't really tell you what fate has in store next for the hero of the multiverse. Perhaps one day we'll see Sia, Lana, and this particular Link again in another story. And with all of that, I now think that I have said all that needs to be said. Holy shit, this was a huge project. I cannot believe I managed to pull all of that out of my ass. This script was 75 pages long, and I was still making changes to it even during the editing phase. I guess the only thing I have left to say at this point is thank you for watching this video to the end. Oh, yeah, I guess I should comment on my word from the last video, huh? Don't worry, this video has officially concluded, so if you've had your fill, you're more than welcome to go now. I won't be offended if you leave. You still saw the video to the end, and I'll always be thankful as all hell. So, if you've watched my Mario Kart re-ranked video before watching this one, then you probably noticed real quick that I was all over the place for this video. Just acting like a total goofball, quite unlike how I was behaving during the Mario Kart video. Well, acting like a jester of sorts was how I normally structured my works, to be both informative and funny. Well, I mentioned that I got criticism in my past videos where people just tore into me about how I was behaving. So with these two videos, I wanted to see from behind the scenes which of the two styles I gave was what my viewers preferred more of, focusing specifically on my attitude. I'm not going to talk about what people said regarding the Mario Kart video here, but once I get enough feedback from both videos, I plan to make another update video about my future projects on this channel, as well as how I intend to style my videos from that point on, and what I plan to do regarding my previous videos. Based on how my schedule is going, that will most likely be the next video. I do know what I plan to work on next afterwards, so I hope you all look forward to it. Oh, I guess I better wrap this up. Someone appears to be knocking and shouting for me at the door. Alright, I think this video is all good now. See you next time, guys. And again, thank you so much for watching.